Okay, we should be live. Starting a little bit late. We're actually starting an hour later than I wanted to. But here we are. We're gonna be testing. We're gonna be trying to test some CPU-bound games. I may just end up playing Pragmata later on. But we are in Final Fantasy XIV today. For those of you that don't know, this weekend, as of starting earlier today, is the North American Fan Festival for Final Fantasy XIV. So Final Fantasy XIV is coming back. We talked about this, I think last week I mentioned it, that after April, really there's no other major games that I'm interested in. Oh, actually I just remembered the Grand Blue Fantasy Relink open beta. I need to go figure out how to get access to that. Grand Blue Fantasy Relink, the open beta is live. How do I access it? Relink. Grand Blue. Is the website working? It doesn't seem like it. Doesn't seem like it's working. Hold on, I see the super chat. Hold on, why?
If I only game on my PCs, should I buy the 9800X3D2? Or just buy one just for bragging rights?
It's up to you. Honestly, it's not really going to improve things for you compared to the 9950X 3D, just a standard one. It's, in your scenario, it's going to be more for bragging rights. I personally don't think you need it. Unless you want to mess with the overclocking, there isn't really much of a reason to get one. Other than to have kind of the Halo tier CPU. But even then, the standard 9950X3D is still kind of the flagship CPU. The D2 is kind of a one-off. I don't even know if AMD will repeat this CPU in the future. Like, we may just get the one D2 and then they don't do it again because it's extremely niche in terms of the benefits of having the extra V-cache on the second CCD. You know, now I kind of have like all of them, which is ridiculous. See, I've got like all three of these Ryzen 9 flagships now. It's like all three of them stacked together. The boxes form like a cube. All those Ryzen 9s, you know what I'm saying? Hey Mark, yeah, but it's definitely going to be bragging rights at this point. In terms of gaming performance, it's not any faster. I mean, it's in some games, it's a tiny bit faster, but it's so negligible that it's not really going to be noticeable, if that makes sense. I think it's kind of a one of a kind. I don't know if AMD is going to repeat this in the future. They might. I think the only thing this does is this proves that they were correct when they said that there isn't much of a benefit to having the 3D V-cache on both CCDs. If Threadripper had an X3D CPU, you know there actually is a Threadripper class CPU with X3D. It's just not sold as a Threadripper. It's an Epic server CPU that does have 3D V-cache. But it's only for Epic and it's only qualified for server motherboards. But yeah, that is the type of CPU that they really need to bring to the Threadripper lineup. I agree with you. If there was an X3D Threadripper, I probably already would have gotten it by now. It does make these CPU-bound games butter smooth, but the thing is, these games are already butter smooth with the normal X3D CPU. Really, the only thing it does is it allows for a lot of applications to be running in the background. That's really all it does. Yeah, the only reason why I booted into this was because the fan festival is taking place this weekend. And they made a lot of announcements. They announced the next expansion. It's coming out in January of next year. They're making a lot of changes to the combat system. They're adding a whole new combat system. They're calling it the Evolved mode. There's the Reborn mode that gets the name from A Realm Reborn, which is basically the way the game plays today. That's kind of the, you can call this the legacy battle system. And there's the new mode. So, the Evolved mode, which will be available in Evercold, the new expansion, Final Fantasy XIV 8.0, January 2027. We will be covering the next expansion of this game. I will be streaming the whole playthrough, like the entire MSQ. I'm actually so far behind right now in the game. Like, I haven't even done, like, we're about to go into 7.5, and I haven't even done 7.4. So it's like I've only completed up to 7.3 in the story. So all the main quests that are in this game right now, I haven't even done those. So I'm already behind. But you know, I'll catch up. They went over some things like they're redoing the dailies so that it's now weeklies instead of dailies, because they understand they don't want players to feel fatigued. They don't want people to get burned out playing the game. So I think it's good, though. It's about time they made some changes, like the battle system changes, because there were so many buttons on the hotbar, and they were very reluctant to introduce a lot of new moves with Endwalker and with Dawntrail because of the clutter on the hotbar. So the Evolved mode addresses that. Basically, what I understood from the Evolved mode is they're basically taking what already exists in the PvP battle system, because if you do PvP in this game is completely different. The combat system, the button mapping is way different from the way it plays in the regular, like the PvE. So they're basically taking a variant of the PvP battle system, and they're calling that the Evolved mode. I might be oversimplifying some of that. There's more to it. Like they're consolidating some moves. So like some button presses, like you target an enemy and it does damage, but if you target an ally, it heals them or it buffs them or something like that. There's things like that they're doing, which is actually a really good change that I think it has been needed for years. One thing that I was a little disappointed, though, they said that they're focusing on job identity. To me, I didn't really get an impression that the new battle system really makes different jobs stand out from one another, because one of the complaints with this game is that over the last several expansions, the battle system has become more like samey. Like a lot of the tanks all feel the same, a lot of the healers all feel mostly the same. The DPS is like, if you're a melee DPS, your rotations are different, but you're basically doing the same thing. If you're range DPS, same deal. Caster DPS, same thing. So the casters do play differently. Like the casters are probably the ones that play the most different from each other. Like Summoner is very different from Black Mage, which is very different from Pictomancer and Red Mage. So the casters have always felt quite unique. But the melee DPSs like Monk, Dragoon, Samurai, you know, like they lack... I mean, obviously the weapons and the armor make them look different, but they don't actually feel that different when you actually sit down and play Like, you max level those jobs, and then you go through the rotations, and then they all kind of feel like, okay, you're just gonna map the same buttons for the same combos to whatever hotbar, you know what I'm saying? So they're trying to address that, but from what they showed on stage today, it didn't really feel like it's a drastic change. Like, I would have rather they introduced something like the talent trees that World of Warcraft has had back in Classic WoW. I think this game really could have benefited from that. In fact, when this game first relaunched back in 2013, A Realm Reborn and even Heavensward, the job identity was there. They all felt unique. They had cross-class skills. It felt kind of like having talent trees from WoW. I really wish they would have brought that back, because I really wish, like, I could play as a sage that has a slightly different build than another person also playing as sage, and both of our sages are drastically different from like a white mage or a scholar. You know what I'm saying? So these are the things that I'm a little bit disappointed. When they said, "Oh, we're gonna focus on job identity" at the beginning of the show, I was like, "Oh, that's good to hear." But then when they got to the dev panel and they showed off what the changes were, I basically thought to myself, okay, they're basically taking the PvP battle system and they're just making that the preferred battle system for the regular game. But I don't know. We'll see. There might be a little bit more to it than that. Regardless, I will be playing the expansion in January next year, and we will be focusing on this game again, probably in the summer when there's not a lot going on, hardware and gaming-wise. I'll probably come back to Final Fantasy XIV, and I'll be playing it on the D2, like we're doing right now. So what are people saying here? 5%, yeah. I mean, it's the fastest CPU. All those people talking about, like, oh, the CCD, blah, 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 crossing the CCD. Well, they're not really complaining anymore, because the AMD kind of proved them wrong with the scheduler, the way it works. And this CPU, basically now it doesn't matter which CCD the game is on. Windows still schedules it to one CCD, like it should, even though the other CCD is just as capable. But either way, it's the best CPU there is right now for consumer desktop, unless you want to go to Threadripper or Granite Rapids for that memory bandwidth and PCIe lanes. What are you looking for? What game are you looking for the most? I've already played my most anticipated game. Neo 3 was my most anticipated game, and I've already played it, and I already beat it. I'm waiting for them to do the DLC stuff to come back to it. So I'm looking at the games that I've already covered this year. Code Vein 2, huge disappointment. Crimson Desert. Crimson Desert's a good game. I just think Crimson Desert has way too much to do. Like, Crimson Desert is the type of game that I don't even know if I'll ever finish, because there's just so much stuff to do. And every time I go into Crimson Desert, I just, like, get lost wandering around. You know, it's that type of game, you know? So it's a great game, though. So Crimson Desert was great. Fatal Frame 2, Crimson Butterfly Remake. I still need to finish that game. That's probably the scariest game I've played all year. Definitely scarier than Resident Evil Requiem. But because it's a remake of an old PS2 game, and as someone who has already, like, platinumed, like, I played the director's cut version of Fatal Frame 2 on the original Xbox. Like, I beat it on every single difficulty, including Fatal Mode, and I played it in first-person mode once. So to me, it's not that scary, but I can tell immediately from the first time I played it a few weeks ago that it is significantly scarier than Resident Evil Requiem, and for people who have never played it before, it's probably the scariest game they've ever encountered. So Fatal Frame 2, really, really good. I highly recommend it, although it is Katana engine. It hates Intel GPUs. It hates the B70. It runs like garbage with a B70. We showed that on stream a few weeks ago. And then The Legend of Heroes Trails Beyond the Horizon. That's a really good JRPG franchise. If you're someone who's never played the Legend of Heroes games, that's the latest one in the series. It came out in January. It was really good. I have not actually finished it, but it is a great game. Monster Hunter Stories 3. That is another really good RPG. I have the game, and I haven't even booted up the game. So, just time constraints. Neo 3, Pragmata, and Resident Evil Requiem. So these are all the games that I have played that are all games that are brand new from 2026. Out of all of them, my favorite one that I've played so far is Neo 3. That one is the best one out of all of the ones I've played. Just looking through what else. So, Adventure of Elliot. So we're going to be playing another game in a couple of days, actually. There is a really, really good game that is about to come out in a few days. And that game might actually be a Game of the Year contender. I don't know yet. But so far, out of all the games I've played, the only one that is a potential Game of the Year contender, just because of the sheer amount of stuff that exists in the game, is going to be Crimson Desert. That being said, do I think Crimson Desert is Game of the Year? No. Definitely not. I think that Crimson Desert is a game that is a textbook example of what happens when you create a game and you have so much ambition of what you want to do with the vision of how that game should be realized, and then you actually manage to make that game, but then the game has way too much in the scope. Crimson Desert is an example of a game that does not contain the scope. It's got too much scope creep, and they actually managed to put all the things they wanted in the game. I would be surprised if there were things in there that they weren't able to include, or they may end up including as DLC in the future. But yeah, that game, it's too much. It's too much. And it sounds weird to say that, but it is an example of something that has too much, to the point where I think it works against the game, and ultimately I don't think Crimson Desert is going to be Game of the Year for that reason. But out of all the games I've played so far, I do think Crimson Desert is the front runner currently for Game of the Year. I think it appeals to the largest audience. Personally, I think Neo 3 is a better game, but obviously I'm someone who tends to favor action games like Devil May Cry, Ninja Gaiden, those type of games. So I'm going to be a little bit more biased and in favoring games like Neo 3, but I recognize objectively Crimson Desert, which is also very action heavy in its own way. Crimson Desert is a game that has more ambition. They set out to do a lot more. They've accomplished a lot with the game world, with the environments you explore, the things you can do, the different quest lines. It feels like a Red Dead Redemption 2 / Witcher 3 / Elden Ring type fusion. So if you like any of those games that I just listed, you probably want to try Crimson Desert. At least play the... I think it has a demo, right? There's like... Or maybe there's not a free demo. I thought there was. Oh, I guess there's no free demo. For some reason, I thought there was a demo. Anyway, Crimson Desert, though, it's a really good game. It's just too much. It's too much for me to handle. Like, I don't think I'll ever finish it because it's just too big. Too much scope. Requires too much of a time sink. It was originally supposed to be an MMO. I can clearly see it was intended to be an MMO. That's the reason why there's so much content, because MMOs have to have giant lakes of content to keep people playing the game. So that's why Crimson Desert is what it is. But it is a very interesting game, and it's one of those games that we do not see very often from a game studio. As far as games that I'm looking forward to for the rest of the year, I can name a few. We're about to play a game in a few days. That is another one that's on my list, which might actually overtake Crimson Desert as Game of the Year. That's coming out in a few days. We won't reveal its name, because I've already talked about it before. If you can figure out what it is, congratulations. And then the other games that I'm anticipating, or I want to play, would be Lords of the Fallen 2, Trails in the Sky 2nd Chapter, and Beast of Reincarnation. Those three. Maybe the Wolverine game, but maybe not. I don't know. I'm on the fence on that one. GTA 6, I'm also on the fence on that one. I'm not a huge fan of the GTA franchise. I don't even have GTA 5. I've never played GTA 5. I played a little bit of GTA Vice City. I don't actually own that game. I borrowed it from like a friend or something for like a week or two, way back in the day of the PS2, I believe, was that game on? PS2, PS3 era, somewhere way back when. And I've never played any of the other Grand Theft Auto games. I've never played 4. I've never played 3. I'm not interested in that franchise. It's just how it is. So I'm probably not going to play GTA 6. I might play it. I don't know. But if I get it on PS5, you can tell I'm not going to get on PC. So if I don't get it on PS5, well, I might get it on PC. But you're talking like 2028, so that's still a long ways off. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So as far as I'm concerned, there's not a lot of games that I'm personally that interested in. There is the 007 James Bond game that's coming out soon. That looks cool, but that game doesn't really appeal to me. So that might be a skip. And then there was another one, Phantom Blade Zero. Phantom Blade Zero looks cool, but I feel like a lot of the Chinese games are starting to look too much like they're copy-pasting each other. And they need, I don't know, like they need to be a little bit more original. Wuchang was okay. Lost Soul Aside was terrible. Wukong in 2024 was amazing. But ever since Black Myth, I haven't seen a game from the action genre that's come out of the Chinese game developer demographic. Like, I haven't seen any of those games match up to Black Myth. Black Myth set the gold standard in terms of what to expect from a Chinese developed action game. And ever since then, nothing has lived up. Wuchang is okay, but I think Wuchang was not as good. It was not as interesting to play as Wukong. It was, it felt like I was playing like a budget Dark Souls 1 with slightly better graphics. So, and then Lost Soul Aside, I regret even buying that game. Like, Lost Soul Aside was so disappointing. That was probably the biggest waste of money personally. I'm not trying to offend the developers. I know they put a lot of work into it, but I don't know, man. Like, that game was the game that, as I was playing it, I started thinking, yeah, I'm gonna have to be a little bit more picky and critical on how I spend money on these games, because some of these games just don't do it. They're just not good enough. They're not good enough to get on the list. The GTR list has to be only like really, really good stuff. So we're being a little bit more strict in terms of the games that make the list to be featured on the channel. So there's not a whole lot out there for the rest of the year as far as I'm concerned. I don't know, what about you guys? Someone mentioned Adventure of Elliot. I'm assuming the 9800 X3D is still superior money-wise. It's 9800 is still superior. Oh, you mean like value? In terms of value, yes, but in terms of overall capability, no. Why are you the only YouTuber I've seen saying it is basically? Because it is. They're removing the 2 minutes meta with. What do you mean by the two minutes meta? Oh, you mean the rotation? You're talking about the 2-minute cooldown for rotations? For the big rotation? Yeah. Well, I think a lot of people have been wanting Square or, Creative Business 3 to do that for a long time. Because, every time I get into this game after not playing it for a while, just the movement and how things feel. You can tell they made this game to be able to account for high ping. compared to World of Warcraft. World of Warcraft, even though World of Warcraft is an older game, it feels smoother than this. Especially when you're in combat, like the instacasts and how they animate. It's such an old game, but it got things right on the first try, which is very, very impressive for a game that came out in 2004. This game, I guess, Square was like, oh, well, we got people with terrible internet or whatever, so we gotta make it like... Actually, no, that's not the reason. The reason why this game is the spaghetti code that it is, in terms of like why combat feels floaty, because every time I try to get someone to play Final Fantasy XIV for the first time, and if there's someone who has played a lot of like action games, or they've played WoW back in the day, the first thing they tell me, like almost always, universally, the first feedback I get from people trying 14, why does it feel so floaty? Everything feels floaty. It's like I'm ice skating. Why does the character glide around when they're like, why is he gliding? Why is he like ice skating when he's moving across the floor? Like, why does it look like that? You know, like simple like complaints about cosmetic things like that. But you can tell it's because the game was made for PS3, like way back in the day. A lot of people forget that Final Fantasy XIV was a game that could run on a PlayStation 3, a console from 2006. A console from 2006 could handle this game back in the day. Now, I know that the current version of the game obviously cannot run on a PS3. So they've made a lot of upgrades to the game over the years. But at its core, this game could run on a toaster in terms of how much memory it used. So it, you know, PS3 was like 256 megabytes of RAM. That's how much RAM the whole console had. And this game used to be able to run on that. So that's the reason why because WoW couldn't run on something like that. At least not like Cataclysm. Maybe like vanilla WoW, like way back, could run on PS3. I'm pretty sure that could, if it was designed to run on PS3. But this was designed to run on PS3, and I think because of all that like legacy code that made it be able to run on such low-end hardware. I say low-end hardware. PS3 was not low-end back then, but even when this game came out, 2.0, 2013, PS3 was already old, and PS4 was about to launch. A lot of people seem to forget that. So, and then the funny thing, speaking of PS4, the PS3 support for 14 ended literally when Stormblood came out. So PS3... This game was on PS3 from like 2013 with the launch of A Realm Reborn. And then it was on, so 2014, 15, 16. So it was like almost 4 years. It was almost 4 years of PS3 support. Then they ended it. And that basically forced people to either move to PC or get a PlayStation 4. Now, if you guys listened to the FanFest keynote earlier today, they said that the system requirements for Evercold are not changing. If you're on PC, nothing's changing. If you're on PS5, obviously nothing's changing. It's a console, you can't really change anything. But for those on PS4, they did say that you'll be safe to play the game on PS4 through around 8.2, maybe 8.3. That's what he said. And he said, so basically about 2 years. So he literally told the crowd of like 10,000 people, you have 2 years to save up for a PS5. He literally said that after like the fact that the price of consoles has gone up in the last couple of months. Like the PS5 is like $900, or the PS5 Pro is like $900 now. So it's funny because he's like, yeah. But see, this is what I tell people. You know, like when a new console comes out, that is the signs of the time that hardware is just moving. Like time waits for no one. And if you're gonna sit on a legacy system like PS4 until you're basically gonna be sitting on it, you're either someone who's gonna eventually get off of it and go to the new system, or you're gonna be forced off of it because the game you play, like in this case Final Fantasy XIV, is gonna stop supporting that console. And I'll be honest, I think that Square Enix handled that so well. Because if it was me, I would have told gamers to get off PS4 like 2 years ago. You know what I'm saying? Like, cause I have a PS4 Pro. I haven't even booted up my PS4 Pro in probably like 4 years. I mean, it's still sitting in the living room, you know, collecting dust. So there's been plenty of opportunity to save up for a PS5. You know, like if Final Fantasy XIV is a big part of someone's life, they can prioritize things to be able to save up for a PS5 over the course of what, 5 years, 6 years. So I don't know, man. It's, to me, PS4, I don't know who could still be playing this game on PS4 in this day and age. At least PS4 Pro. PS4 is end of support like in June. In like 2 months, Sony's gonna like discontinue PS4 support, and they're gonna start they're gonna start sunsetting a lot of the online services for PS4 this summer, which means Square Enix is going above and beyond by continuing to support the game on the PlayStation 4, because PS4 is truly a legacy system at this point. It is a console from 2013. I don't care if someone bought their PS4 like 2 years ago. If they did, they need to come to terms with the fact that they bought a legacy platform that's from 2013. Even if they bought it brand new with a full warranty like a year ago, too bad. You saw your video saying that you plan to do Linux. Yeah. It'll most likely be Ubuntu. It'll be Ubuntu LTS, whatever version it is, 23 or 24. They come with tools that help with running games. I'm just gonna boot up the Ubuntu system, and whatever driver it says to install or update, that's what I'm gonna do. I'm pretty sure I already have Steam installed on it. My plan is to install the games on Steam, on Linux, boot up the game. If the game runs, see how it runs. If the game does not run, exit out of it, go to the next one. I think I'm on 23 or 24. How hard is it to update to 26? Can I just update it from within? I don't have to reinstall Linux, do I? When you say the tools, what are you referring to? Like Proton? I already know when the PlayStation 6 is releasing. I've already told people this. It's November of 2027, if you don't know. November 2027 is the PS6 launch, guys. Mark my words. It's always 7 years, and it's always November. Always 7 years, always November. Look at the PlayStation 4 launch, look at the PlayStation 5 launch. That's all you need to do. You don't need to listen to leaks, you don't need to listen to rumors. Publicly traded companies run on product roadmaps that their shareholders force them to adhere to. It's not that hard. Since you are on LTS, you can just update to the next. Okay. Okay. Yeah. And I'll be running with RDNA 2. We'll be gaming on Linux with RDNA 2. Oh, that reminds me, I should probably go over what we're actually using for this stream. Okay, so this is the system. So you guys can see. AMD Ryzen 9 9950X 3D2 16 core 32 thread. The game is running up here on the fast CCD 5.6 gigahertz with the 3D V cache. We have background, we have OBS is running somewhere, and then we've got Windows telling me that I have an Intel Arc driver update that keeps on showing up at the bottom right. That's running on one of these cores down here. So you can see the CPU is being fully utilized. Like, the game runs like it's supposed to on the fast CCD. The background stuff is running on whatever. There's some other stuff over here. And then we've got 96 gigabytes of RAM because I always do 96 gigs. I never do less. If I'm gonna run less than 96, I'm running 48. I do not run 32. I do not run 64. It's always 48 gigs or 96 gigs. If I want more RAM, I go to Threadripper. My Threadripper system has 128 gigabytes of RDIMM ECC memory at 6400. I always run 6400 mega transfers. If I'm running 4 sticks like this, it's always 6400 mega transfers. Now, 6000 is also good. It's just I don't have any EXPO 6000 that has high density like this on single rank, so this is why we run this. And of course, 4 sticks of memory, because why not? This is an enthusiast channel, so we're gonna run 4 sticks because we can. It's easy. And then we have the AMD Radeon graphics on the Ryzen D2, literally doing absolutely nothing. Then we have the Radeon AI Pro. So this is the thing that I changed for the desktop. Initially, I was going to use this GPU, the Intel Arc Pro B70. However, the Intel Arc Pro B70 is not powerful enough to handle the games at a 4K output resolution, because I am gaming at 4K on a 240 Hz OLED 32 inches right now. It is glorious endgame gaming experience. But the B70 cannot handle 4K gaming and streaming at the same time. So this is the reason why we're running dual GPU. We're running Radeon AI Pro R9700, 32 gigabytes of VRAM, and we have the Intel Arc Pro B70 also with 32 gigabytes of VRAM. So you can see lots of VRAM for AI, lots of VRAM for 4K gaming, dual GPU, quad, and we have quad encoders. We have one encoder on the integrated. We have dual encoders on the Pro, maybe triple, but I think at least dual. Yeah, we got dual, and then we have, I don't know how many this supports. This is either single or dual on the B70. But either way, this is a true enthusiast gaming desktop that can do everything. We are not memory limited in any way. We are not core limited in any way. We are not VRAM limited in any way. And we are also not PCIe bandwidth limited in any way, because both of these graphics cards are running at PCIe Gen 5. 8 lanes Gen 5, because 2 of them together, they share the 16 lanes, but they're both Gen 5 graphics cards. So each one of these, even though they're both running at 8 lanes, they are each equal to Gen 4 16 lanes. So we're not bandwidth starved at all. What if your RAM is XMP on AMD. Okay, that's a very interesting question. I'm going to respond to your question with another question. This is a question that comes up often. Questions like this indicate to me that I'm not trying to like make fun of you or anything. This is a learning experience for people. It's a valid question. But when I hear someone ask a question like that, like, what if you're using XMP on AMD? Is that a problem? When I hear that question, because it comes up a lot, this is my immediate impression that I get when I hear that question. And do not take this as offensively. I don't mean it this way. When I hear this question, it sounds like the person asking the question is new to building PCs. They either have never built a custom PC before, but they want to learn, or they're just curious. So there's nothing wrong with the question. But I'm going to pose a question to you in response to that question that I think should answer this question. If I have an AM4 system, so a DDR4 system from 2019, or maybe 2020, a pandemic PC, using AM4 with a 5800X or a 5800X3D. Okay, imagine if that was my computer. And I want to put RAM in the computer. This is going to be DDR4. And every DDR4 kit that is meant for performance memory is XMP memory. It's either JEDEC or it's XMP memory. So keep that in mind. We're talking DDR4. So if I have an AM4 desktop and I want to install high performance memory with my AMD Ryzen 7 5800X3D, I have to get Intel XMP, okay, quote unquote Intel XMP RAM. So is that a problem? Is it a problem to use XMP RAM with a 5800X because there's no alternative besides JEDEC? I think that answers your question. Hopefully that answers the question. If it doesn't answer the question, we can answer it another way. But does that answer the question? That's a good question. It comes up a lot. It comes up a lot on the memory videos. Well, let's bring up, where's paint? Let's do it this way. Put it over here. I'll explain the difference. Hold on. Where's paint? Oh, there it is. Okay. Turn this down a little bit. Okay. So what is XMP? XMP. So let's begin by talking about DDR3. The year is 2013. The year is 2013. So let's go back in time. The year is 2013. Prior to the PS4 launch, because remember PS4 launch was November 2013, okay? The year is 2013. I decided to build a computer. FX 8350. Who knows what this is? The FX 8350, the legendary or infamous or famous FX 8350. This is an AM3 Plus CPU. An AM3 Plus CPU. You want to get DDR3 RAM. It uses DDR3. DDR3 1866. Well, let's not even go there yet. DDR3 RAM. Required. You go to Micro Center. What do they have? You can choose between two types. You can buy JEDEC DDR3 2400. No, that's not right. That's way too fast. 1066. DDR3 1066 or DDR3 1333. 1333. Let's say JEDEC 1066. So you can get JEDEC 1066, or you can get something called XMP DDR3 1333. Or you could get another super duper high-end XMP DDR3 1600 at 1.65 volts. Super high-end stuff. Later on, they refined the memory so you could run it at 1.5 volts. Very cool stuff. Low voltage. There's also XMP DDR3 1866 1.65 volts and XMP DDR3 2133 1.65 volts. This is like the super high-end stuff. This stuff is like CL11. That is super high-end. This is like CL9. This is like CL9. This is like CL7. This is like CL12 or 13 or something. I don't know, 13, whatever. This is JEDEC. I don't remember the JEDEC ones, but whatever, it doesn't matter. So, this is an example of what was available for someone who was wanting to build an AMD system in 2013 or late 2012, because this CPU launched October 2012. October 2012. Literally, this CPU launched with the Nintendo Wii U. The FX 8350 and the Nintendo Wii U are the same age. This hopefully adding the consoles into this conversation puts things into perspective as to how old these CPUs are and how old these consoles also are. Wii U and FX 8350 are the same age. They're both ancient. So the question at the beginning, the question earlier was, what if your RAM is XMP? Does XMP work on AMD? Absolutely it works on AMD, because anyone who was building PCs in the DDR3 and the DDR4 era knows that XMP was literally your only option, regardless of whether you were on AMD or Intel. Now, what is XMP? I guess that is the next question. What is XMP? XMP stands for Extreme Memory Profile, or Extreme Memory Profiles, developed by Intel. Intel came up with the XMP standard. Extreme memory profiles, or it could also be extended memory profiles for overclocking. It is basically Intel developed standardization. It is an Intel developed standard for high performance desktop memory. Now it can be technically it can be translated over to SODIMM for laptop, but it typically doesn't exist in the laptop space. It is meant for high performance desktop memory. It is an Intel standard. Intel's the one that developed it. So they're the ones who market it as XMP. They're the ones who go to companies like Corsair, like G-Skill, like Guile, Team Group, T-Force, all these companies that you see selling RAM. And Intel literally is the one who tells them. Intel is like a social influencer telling the memory resellers, or I guess we'll not say reseller, let's not use reseller, the memory ODMs, the original device manufacturer, or ODM, also original equipment manufacturer, OEM. They're like a social influencer, basically tell them, hey, when you make your RAM, why don't you put a profile and call it XMP profile? That way, the gamers know that it runs fast. That is all it is. It's that's what it is. Extended profiles for overclocking. Yeah, that's actually the correct name. Extended memory profiles for overclocking. But people forget that the overclocking word is part of this because there's no O in this. But anyway, so that's what it is. It's an Intel thing. They developed this. I don't remember if this existed in the DDR2 era. It definitely did not exist in the DDR1 era. It might have actually been developed during DDR2, but it was definitely around in DDR3, and it continued through DDR4. Now, what about AMD? AMD developed something called AMP. AMD Memory Profiles, or AMP. A lot of people don't know this or forgot about this. For DDR3 memory, I actually have an AMD. I actually have two different kits. One, someone gave me later on. They just like gave me their hardware. They didn't want it anymore. They're like, here, take my computer. I quit. I'm going to consoles. PC is too hard. Take all my computer parts. I don't care anymore. So they handed me like literally. So I actually have a, I think it's like a 16. Like literally someone gave me a 16 gigabyte. It's like 2x 8 gig. DDR3 2133 AMP AMP AMD memory profile. They literally just gave me these sticks and they're just like, I quit computer gaming, I quit desktop, I'm going to laptop, and I'm going to play consoles. So they handed this to me. So I still have this RAM somewhere in storage, somewhere I know I have it. But this is the RAM that I've never actually used. So I personally purchased, in like 2013, I purchased AMD Radeon, I think it's Radeon memory or something. It's like Radeon Performance Series RAM, which is it was like 16 gigabyte, so it's 2x8 DDR3 1866 CL9 1.5 volts. So yeah, this was the memory kit that I used with the FX 8350. So it's AMP. It's not XMP, it's AMP. So a lot of people don't know this. A lot of people are like, oh, XMP is an Intel thing, but AMD didn't have anything. It is true, AMD did not have anything like XMP all throughout the DDR4 era. So all throughout DDR4 only had XMP. Like, it was literally XMP or JEDEC throughout the DDR4 era. DDR3 had XMP and AMP. Now, the weird thing with DDR5, we should probably move this down there, but with DDR5, this is only XMP. DDR5 has XMP and EXPO. Enter EXPO. This is where EXPO comes in. And this is the thing that I always found kind of weird. AMD goes and they reinvent the wheel. They go and they introduce this new standard that they came up with called EXPO, which stands for, so what is EXPO? EXPO stands for, I think it stands for extended, it's like extended profile, extended memory profiles. I think it's extended memory profiles, or it's extended profiles for overclocking. It's like extended memory profiles for overclocking or something like that. I think that's what EXPO stands for. So kind of like how Intel's one is extreme memory profiles. AMD's one is extended profiles for overclocking. But AMD used to literally have one called AMD memory profiles. That's a little bit of a trivia question for those who like learning about the history of desktop computing. There used to be, AMD had an older standard called AMP or AMP. It was super easy to remember because it's just AMP. Why they reinvented the wheel with this EXPO thing, I never understood this. And I always liked the AMP naming because it was more similar to XMP. So you had XMP and you had AMP back in the DDR3 era. And I always found that just way easier to remember. But yeah, you can use XMP with an AMD CPU. You literally had to do this with DDR4 because there was literally only XMP in that whole era. And today, you can use XMP with DDR5. Every time you guys see me running DDR5 8000, guess what? Oh, I didn't realize that this is in the way. Not this. Where is it? There. Every time I talk about DDR5 8000, my DDR5 8000 kit is an XMP kit. It's not an EXPO kit. So I constantly use XMP memory with an AMD platform. Now, the question that I almost never get, which is an interesting thing that I've wondered, like why no one ever asks me this. I see a lot of people asking me if you can use XMP with AMD. Which, to me, I think that's an easier question to figure out the answer to, because you literally, like anyone who built an AM4 system is using XMP memory. So the answer is yes. The opposite is also true, meaning you can use EXPO RAM with an Intel CPU, and it absolutely works. In fact, that's how I ran my 13900K system. So it's like my 13900K, so i9 13900K was paired up with EXPO memory. My Ryzen 7950X, back when I was using that, was paired up with XMP RAM. I just did that to prove that it could be done. And that's how I always use those CPUs. EXPO on Intel, XMP on AMD. That's how I roll. Just because. The motherboard BIOS recognizes it. It works. No problems. One thing I will say, to close the loop on this, because this is an interesting discussion. EXPO is developed by AMD. That means that if a company is going to sell you RAM with an EXPO profile, you can be sure that they tested and validated it to work with an AMD Ryzen CPU. Otherwise, they can't put the AMD Ryzen logo or the EXPO logo on the box if they didn't test it that way. Same thing with XMP. If a company is selling you XMP memory, it means that they tested it with an Intel CPU. So it's validated to work with those platforms. Now that doesn't mean that you cannot mix and match. I have literally stated multiple times that it is totally fine to run EXPO on an Intel CPU and an XMP. Now the easy answer, everybody should know, anyone who's ever built computers in the last 20 years knows that XMP works with AMD. But the one that I want to bring the attention to is EXPO on Intel. You can absolutely use EXPO memory with an Intel CPU, and it works totally fine. As someone who does this literally every day. The timings are slightly different than EXPO. They could be. The subtimings could be. They could be different, but usually they're not that different. So so if you have an ASUS motherboard, for example, and so ASUS has EXPO 1, EXPO 2. Or if you have an XMP memory kit and you plug it into a ASUS AMD motherboard, it'll say something called DOCP. Only ASUS does this. If you install XMP RAM in an AMD, in a Ryzen-based ASUS motherboard, and you try to load the XMP profile, it'll be listed as DOCP1 or DOCP2. This is something that ASUS has carried over from the legacy days of DDR4. They did this, well, actually, I think they go as far back as DDR3. They may have been doing this since, yeah, they've been doing this since DDR3. So if you installed XMP memory in an ASUS motherboard that's meant for an AMD CPU, they will not actually show you the XMP label. They will show you something called DOCP. So this is another acronym, but it's only applicable to ASUS. So what is DOCP? DOCP stands for, I think it stands for Dynamic Overclocking Profile. DOCP, Dynamic Overclocking Profile for AMD. DOCP equals XMP on ASUS AMD motherboard. The only time you will ever see DOCP is if you're on an ASUS motherboard that has an AMD socket. It can be AM3+, it can be AM4, it can be AM5. Only ASUS does this because ASUS invented their own translation profile for XMP to work on AMD motherboards. If you have ASUS, you will see DOCP. It literally means you have an XMP memory kit installed on an AMD-based motherboard that was manufactured by ASUS. If you're on MSI and you install XMP, you will see AXMP equals XMP on MSI AMD motherboard. They call it AXMP. It means AMD XMP, or it's adapted XMP for AMD-based CPUs. This is an MSI spec. Okay? Because technically, what these two companies are doing, ASUS and MSI, they are being politically correct. They're being politically correct. They recognize that XMP was developed by Intel. It is an Intel proprietary standard. And in order to use it on a competitor's platform, like an AMD CPU, for example, they're going to translate it to something that they came up with themselves. So in the case of ASUS, DOCP. In the case of MSI, AXMP. Now, what about... So I hear you people are probably wondering, like, okay, what about the other two?
I haven't touched my PS5 Pro since I built my living room 5090. Saros may change that.
Man, every time you comment about the the 5090 living room, every time I hear about that, I keep thinking of that OLED display that you use, the Samsung, with all the nits, with all the nits, man. Just like, I don't blame you, but yeah, Saros might actually change that. Yeah, yeah, that game's looking pretty good, man. I can't wait. I can't wait for that. That's rapidly moving up the ladder in terms of games that I'm hyped to play for the remainder of this year. But that's Asus and MSI. So what about ASRock and Gigabyte? Anybody know what they do? Who here knows what ASRock and Gigabyte do? When you install XMP, XMP equals XMP on ASRock and Gigabyte. These two literally tell Intel, screw you, I don't care if you invented XMP, I'm just gonna make it work as is on your competitor's CPU. I don't care. That's literally what they say to Intel. Intel put all that marketing dollars into creating XMP, and ASRock and Gigabyte are like, too bad. We're gonna call it XMP, and it's gonna work on a Ryzen motherboard. Screw you, Intel. I mean, it sounds pretty harsh to say it that way, but that's literally how it's worked the whole time. You go and install an XMP kit on an ASRock or a Gigabyte AMD-based motherboard, and guess what? It literally says XMP. That is so politically incorrect and just straight up wrong that they do that. But they're just hardcore, like, they just like strong arm Intel and like, too bad. You invented this thing? I don't care. It's your patent. I literally don't care. So that's how they've always dealt with it. I don't know how they're able to get away with any sort of like legal or illegal ramifications for doing that. But at least MSI and Asus, at least they're being more politically correct. It's like, yeah, Intel invented XMP, so we're gonna call, like, Asus calls it DOCP, so that Intel can't get mad at them, and MSI calls it AXMP, so that Intel can't get mad at them, even though technically, I mean, XMP's in the name there, MSI. You're not really doing a good job hiding it, but it's there. These guys, they literally don't care. They literally don't care. So, but, okay, so now what happens when you install EXPO on an Intel? What happens when you put EXPO on an Intel? EXPO equals EXPO on Intel-based motherboards. AMD doesn't care. Intel doesn't care. None of the motherboard manufacturers care. No one cares. If you install EXPO RAM on an Intel CPU-based motherboard, it shows up as EXPO when you try to load the kit. No problems. Fully compatible with the competitor's CPU. Because AMD doesn't lock it down. Like, they said, oh, it's an open standard, anyone can use it, blah, blah, blah. So they don't care. They're not collecting royalties or anything. Now, I don't know what Intel does. I don't know if there's some kind of licensing fee that they have to pay Intel for XMP. I kind of doubt it. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there is a license fee. But the biggest difference between XMP and EXPO, and this is why I personally prefer to buy EXPO, is because if you buy an EXPO kit, per AMD, the manufacturer that sold you the kit, so in this case if you buy a G-Skill EXPO kit, they need to publish the full SPD profile, not only the primary timings, but the sub-timings, the tertiary timings, the voltages, everything. They have to provide all of that documentation to the customer who purchased the kit. If they don't do it, you can email their support team and they will send it to you. They'll literally email you the full table, so you know exactly what the tertiaries, the subtimings are from the factory that was literally written into the ROM of the SPD. That is something that you get if you buy an EXPO kit. If you buy an XMP kit, you do not necessarily have access to that information. That is not considered public information. It is proprietary. So technically, if you buy XMP and you want to know what the stock tertiaries are for the SPD, the manufacturer is not legally obligated to tell you that information. They can withhold that information from you because of the XMP spec. It is a closed proprietary spec, so they don't have to do that. Usually what they'll do is they'll publish the primary timings and the VDDQ voltage if it's DDR5. So you'll know if it's like, you know, 1.35 volts or 1.4 volts or whatever. And then like your cast latency number, the primaries, and then the subtiming. But that's basically it. You don't get tertiary, you don't get TREFI numbers, you don't get any of that stuff if you buy XMP. So this probably is the final answer to that question. Like if you put XMP memory on an AMD motherboard, the timings might be different. Yeah, they could end up being different, but the thing is, you're going to have a pretty hard time finding out what they're supposed to be other than having the motherboard load them and figure them out. Now, what ASUS has done, ASUS has DOCP1 or EXPO 1 and DOCP2. DOCP2 is supposed to load the entire table of all the subtiming values from the manufacturer. So the second one always loads, or is supposed to load, all of the subtiming tertiaries and everything that the manufacturers designed the memory to run at. That's what the second number does. If you do DOCP1 or EXPO 1, what that does is ASUS will load the primary timings that are on the box and the primary voltage that was on the box, and then it'll just kind of figure out what it wants to place the other values at. So if you select 1, you're leaving it up to ASUS's BIOS to determine what the memory should run at for the subtimings. So it could be something really close to the stock value that was intended, or it could be something better, or it could be something worse. DOCP1, there's a lot of variance. So hopefully that gives you the answer that you were looking for in terms of what happens if you do that. Realistically, if you have an ASUS motherboard, what I personally do, I load the second one. I always go with the second one. DOCP2 or EXPO 2. That's what I load. The other guys, like MSI and Gigabyte and ASRock, those guys typically only do the second one. They don't give you an option for the first one like ASUS does. What they do alternatively is a lot of them have features that let you load like an overclocker profile, like a well-known overclocker profile. MSI has this feature called Memory Try It, which is similar. ASRock has some cache table values you could use. Gigabyte, I think, has something similar last time I checked. So there's alternatives, but I think this might be a little bit more information than what you were looking for. But that's kind of what it is. If you don't want to deal with any sort of variance from the actual manufacturer spec, always load the second one if you're on an ASUS motherboard. And if you're on the other vendors like Gigabyte, ASRock, etc., it always is the second one, as far as I know. Alright, well, hopefully that answered the question. Okay. Remember people cooking eggs on the GTX 480? Yeah, because it looked like a George Foreman grill. You know, I always wanted one of those. The GTX 480. I always wanted one, and then when the RX 480 came out, I remember getting the RX 480 on launch day and pretending it was a GTX 480. That was pretty lame, but I kept thinking like, oh, it's like a GTX 480. But it doesn't heat up enough to cook eggs, because it didn't use that much power. Alright, well, I mean, there's not really much for me to do in this game. Does anybody that's watching the stream, does anybody actually play Final Fantasy XIV, or used to play Final Fantasy XIV? Or is even interested in the upcoming expansion? Or patch 7.5? There were some comments at the beginning of the stream talking about it. About removing the 2-minute meta. That was like the one comment on Final Fantasy XIV. There might have been another one. I may have missed it. Oh, you want to start Final Fantasy? You want to start it? It's a time sink. It's more of a time sink than Crimson Desert, I'll tell you that. Because Crimson Desert was a game that was supposed to be an MMO and ended up becoming a single-player game. This game is a full MMO. Like, this is the true... Like, this game and World of Warcraft are the two game... Maybe Guild Wars 2, I guess, is the other one. There's probably some other Korean MMOs, like Black Desert. Black Desert Online is kind of... I don't know, it just doesn't have the same community vibe that you get when you play World of Warcraft, Guild Wars, or Final Fantasy. I think these are the three, like, big traditional MMOs that feel very community, socially driven type experiences that are very, very different from, like, your typical live service gacha games or Call of Duty or whatever multiplayer MOBA game that you might play. I mean, those are the sort of things, like, I haven't played MOBAs in years. Like, I haven't played League of Legends in, like, I don't know, it feels like 7-8 years since the last time I played League of Legends. It's funny because I don't even have it installed on most of my desktops anymore. FF is like Rocky movies. Yeah, I know, man. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. It is kind of like Rocky movies. If you guys watched the fan festival that's happening in Anaheim, California this weekend, they had one of the social influencers on the stage that was saying that he basically said something like, Final Fantasy, he's like, I've been playing Final Fantasy games since the 90s. So he's like, shout out to all the old people out there. Because when he said 90s, I was thinking like, what? Final Fantasy games in the 90s were what? Final Fantasy... It was the sprite-based games, wasn't it? It was like Final Fantasy 3, 4, 5, 6. Then you had 7 on the PlayStation 1 and 8. And I think 9 was like 2000, if I'm not mistaken. Final Fantasy 9. 7, 8, 9 were PS1. They were the big move from sprite-based graphics, 2D, to like 3D characters with 2D/3D backgrounds. It was actually like a 2D background. I don't know. Those early PS1 Final Fantasy games were interesting. The good old Super Nintendo, yeah, those were the Final Fantasy games. When that guy was saying like, I've been playing Final Fantasy games since the 90s, I was thinking, man, when I think 90s, I was too young to play Final Fantasy games in the 90s. I didn't play Final Fantasy games until the 2000s, personally. Like, when I think 90s, I think Power Rangers Zeo and Power Rangers in Space. That's literally what comes to mind. When someone says 90s, I don't think of Final Fantasy. I think of Power Rangers Zeo and Power Rangers in Space. Not the other Power Rangers, just those two. I don't know why, it was just those two. You were PC gaming in the 80s? PC gaming in the 80s must have been really different though, because like everything was what, megahertz? Things were in the megahertz back then. They weren't in the gigahertz. Gigahertz was what, early 2000s? DDR1? You know, you guys know the limit of my ability to understand computer hardware. I don't know anything older than DDR1. If the computer didn't use DDR1, or obviously 2, 3, or 4, or 5, I don't know what it is. I am not familiar with what came before DDR1. My experience building computers goes as far back to DDR1. My first computer was a DDR1 computer. So, here, let me erase a lot of this. I think I've mentioned my original computer, the very first computer that I built. My first custom built PC. So the first PC that I built myself was Socket 939. Socket 939. AMD. Is it AMD Athlon 64 or was it AMD 64 Athlon? 3200 plus. Which was like 2 gigahertz, 1 core, 1 thread. No SMT, no hyper threading. That is my very first computer. My very first computer. Motherboard. This was the CPU. CPU. Motherboard was EVGA Enforce 4? NVIDIA chipset. NVIDIA chipset for AMD Socket 939. RAM. DDR 800 or DDR 400. Someone might have to help me with the RAM. DDR1 512 megabytes. 2x 256 megabytes. That's my very first computer. GPU. ATI Radeon X850 XT, the most coveted GPU for WoW Vanilla back in the day. I remember my cousin, when I put this computer together, my cousin was so jealous because I had a Radeon X850 XT. Because you know why? Because this was a PCIe 1.0 X16 back in the day. PCIe Gen 1. That was a big deal because most graphics cards at the time were either PCI or something called AGP. AGP was the thing that most PC gamers were using back then. But PCI Express, when it was brand new, it was the latest and greatest. Oh my goodness. Wow. At 1280 by 1024 resolution. That was my first PC. That was the PC, man. That was World of Warcraft. I built this computer primarily to play World of Warcraft and Guild Wars 1, the original Guild Wars. GVG, Guild vs. Guild, PvP. Those were the days. I mean, there were other games too. I think like Half-Life 2. I remember playing Unreal Tournament 2004. This is back when I actually played shooters. semi-competitively. Although I was never as good as my cousin. My cousin was so good at Counter-Strike. He was so good at Counter-Strike that he actually competed in Vegas with his clan for like tournament money back in the day. Like, he was that good. He was like literally pro gamer level good at Counter-Strike, I think 1.6. This was way before like CS2 days. This was the heyday of CS1 back in the day, man. And he was so jealous because he's like, oh my goodness, you have a PCIe. You have PCIe. And it's like, whoa, you don't even play competitive Counter-Strike and you have this? What? And I had a flat screen. Although I will say, CRTs back then were really, really good, man. CRT response times were so good back then. But I had like a Tyrus. My monitor was a Tyrus 17-inch 1280. This is a TFT. TN panel. I was playing WoW, I was playing Guild Wars, I was playing Age of Empires 2, The Conquerors expansion, I was playing StarCraft, Brood War, Warcraft 3, The Frozen Throne, and Dota. Dota, the original Dota, if you know what I'm talking about. Like, back in the day, man. Back in the day, these were the games. These were the games that I played on my very first PC. So I was definitely mostly a console gamer back in the day, because when I look at the games that I was playing on PC, I was basically playing your typical PC games, you know, like RTS. Oh, I was playing, I guess, Counter-Strike. Like the original one, not Counter-Strike 2, Counter-Strike 1. That was pretty much it. That was basically it, man. Those were the days. Literally everybody was playing WoW. Like, literally there was a time where everyone was playing World of Warcraft. It's like no one was playing these other games. Like, everyone was playing World of Warcraft. Did I have an MP3 player? And I never had an MP3 player, but I did have a PSP. I mean, if you've been following this channel for a while, you know some of my most famous videos are the PSP videos that I have that are still on the channel. Those are some really old videos. But the PSP, yeah, I had the PSP. Not only did I have the PSP, I literally had all the PSPs. Like, literally, you can go find like the most viewed video on this channel is literally the PSP video. So I was definitely a console gamer first, PC gamer second in this era. Really, I only built the PC so I could play World of Warcraft. I mean, I remember playing Guild Wars 2 a lot, but then I kind of like, I quit WoW in like sometime during the Burning Crusade. I quit WoW. I know I quit before Wrath. And then I played Guild Wars on and off, because Guild Wars didn't have a subscription, so it was easy to just jump in and then jump out. Then the expansions would come out, I'd play the expansions. I remember playing Heart of the North, Factions. Basically, I played all the Guild Wars expansions. And then what forced me to upgrade my computer was a game called StarCraft. Actually, StarCraft 2 came out, and my computer was so old when StarCraft 2 came out, but I could still play StarCraft 2 on it. I couldn't play it with like high graphic settings, but I could play it. It ran because Blizzard's really good. Blizzard's really good at making their games scaled all the way down to running on a potato. So even my old computer could play StarCraft 2 in like 2010. But the game that forced me to upgrade was a game called Guild Wars 2. Guild Wars 2, when it came out in 2012, I realized my computer is way too old. It needs to be upgraded. because one core, one thread, I'll tell you guys, single core, single thread, no hyper-threading, Guild Wars 2 being an MMO, a modern MMO, CPU demanding, DX9, did not like my single core CPU at all. It did not run well, I'll tell you that. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm gonna need to get a new computer. I'm gonna have to build a whole new computer because Guild Wars 2 is just too much. It's too much. It can't handle it. The computer can't keep up. It's too old. So it's like, I have been there. I know what it's like when it's time to upgrade the computer. I know what it feels like, trust me. Remember the NVIDIA MX, the AGP? I don't, because I didn't really know much about different graphics cards back then. How did you amass so much hardware knowledge? No other channel goes to the depths that you do. Well, I guess my only answer to that question is I'm a tech enthusiast. This is what it means to be a true tech enthusiast. In the most pure sense, that's what it is. Only a true tech enthusiast can get this in-depth in the hardware. You know, and talk this long at this for extended amounts of time about computer hardware. You know, like most people would just kind of like burn out. You know, like they can't keep up. You know, but yeah, no, I can keep talking about. I can tell you about my second computer, my third computer, the switch from AMD to Intel, my Intel era, because there was a whole period where I was Intel. I literally live and breathe Intel. You know what I'm saying? I feel like we spend a lot of time talking about Ryzen, so I don't give Intel enough credit. But there is a whole arc. There's like a whole era arc. Intel arc, get it? No, there's literally an entire arc where it's like I utilize Intel computers. But that is a whole nother story. Because this computer was replaced by my second computer. The second computer was called AM3. AM3 CPU AMD Phenom 2 X4 965 Black Edition. The Black Edition. BE. A lot of gamers know this CPU. Because this CPU was the pinnacle of value back when it was in its prime. This was the time period when AMD started to struggle financially. Like, seriously get into trouble. They were getting into debt. They were piling on debt. They were laying people off to stay afloat. So they had a lot of upper management changes. They had CEOs come and go. And as a result, the products, the R&D, started suffering. And as a result, Intel started surging ahead of them. And AMD started falling further and further behind. But the Phenom 2 stands as, like, it was a CPU that AMD put out there to compete with Intel's best. And this CPU did an awesome job holding down the fort against Intel as long as it could. But eventually, it just got aged out. And then AMD made a huge architectural misstep or misplay by going with the FX series, the clustered multi-threading, or CMT. And as a result, that was what everyone refers to as the dreaded bulldozer era, where AMD launched a CPU that replaced this CPU, but was actually worse than this CPU at single-threaded workloads, and hence gaming performance suffered. And, you know, basically gamers started switching to Intel in droves, because I remember when I built my first computer for World of Warcraft, so this computer here, everyone was using AMD. Like, all the people who were custom building PCs, like, they were doing it as a hobby, like tech enthusiasts back in the day, building computers for WoW and Counter-Strike, they were always going AMD Athlon. If you were someone in the know who knew what you were doing, you were building an AMD Athlon 64. Because it was just so much better than Intel's Pentium 4 back in the day. You know, like, Intel corrected their performance issues with the launch of the Intel Core 2 Duo, also known as the Conroe. And that is when things changed, where Intel, all of a sudden the tables flipped, and Intel was now ahead of AMD in gaming by a significant margin. But AMD was able to stay competitive with Intel's best all throughout the back half of the 2000s decade. Largely, I mean, they had a couple of missteps with the original Phenom, but man, Phenom 2 was literally AMD's saving grace. The Phenom 2 X4 Black Edition. Black Edition was for the gamers. Black Edition means you can overclock it. It had an unlocked multiplier. So, because back then, AMD and Intel, they didn't let you overclock CPUs unless you bought a specific SKU. Like in AMD's case, you had to buy the Black Edition. If you were buying Intel, you had to buy the Extreme Edition. But then later, Intel started selling the K SKUs. You know, like the i7 2600K or the i5 2500K. The K means unlocked multiplier. AMD had the Black Edition. So you had to buy special, more expensive SKUs if you wanted to overclock for more performance. But as AMD fell behind, they started becoming more lenient. They removed the Black Edition. They started selling you whatever CPU you buy. It's always unlocked, so everyone can overclock every AMD CPU. That was how they were trying to stay competitive with Intel during that era. But yeah, my second one was the Phenom 2. This was a quad core. So I went from one core, one thread, to like 4 cores, 4 threads. So I never had like a dual... Like, I never went to, like, a dual-core CPU. I know everyone was using, like, dual-core CPUs. I went to quad-core. Like, I went from single-core to quad-core. That was a huge jump. Massive, massive jump. So, for me, I was like, yeah, I'm back in the game. Phenom 2, it's so good. But at this time, I wasn't aware that Intel was better than AMD at gaming. Like, you know, I'm just like the regular person at this point. It's like I'm just the gamer, and it's like, oh, I buy what I know. It's like my first computer was AMD Athlon because everyone who knows how to build computers was recommending AMD Athlon 64. So I jumped on the bandwagon, and I remember going to Fry's Electronics, and the salespeople were telling me, man, if you buy Intel, because I remember I was telling them, hey, I saw a commercial where this dude was saying, dude, you're getting a Dell. And then in the commercial, it was showing like an Intel inside. So I was like, Intel Pentium 4, isn't that good? Because in the commercial, the guy says, dude, you're getting a Dell Intel inside. So it must be good, right? And the Fry's Electronics salespeople looked at me, then they kind of like looked at each other like they're about to like, they're trying to control themselves from laughing at me. But then one of the guys finally was like, no, actually, the real good CPU is not an Intel CPU. He's like, I'm going to be honest with you, that commercial is BS and they're just straight up lying. The best CPU is actually something called AMD Athlon. And you want to look for the one that says 64, specifically 64. That's the secret number. Don't buy like anything that doesn't have 64. So buy AMD Athlon 64. So I remember when I was told that, I felt like I just got schooled by like a salesperson at Fry's. So I was like, I don't know what to believe. Do I believe a commercial where some dude is saying, dude, you're getting a Dell with an Intel Pentium 4? Or do I believe the sales guy at Micro Center, like or not Micro Center, it was Fry's Electronics, So I was like, well, if you're in my situation, what do you do? Do you trust the sales guy at Fry's Electronics? Or do you trust some commercial on the TV? You know? Like, who's better? Like, who's more believable? So, I don't know. At that point, I was like, well, I gotta go AMD, because the guy's literally telling me, get AMD Athlon 64, you'll be happy. He's like, trust me, you won't regret it. And he asked me, he went so far as to ask me, like, what are you gonna actually do with the computer? Like, what's the purpose of building the computer? And I'm like, I'm gonna play a game called, and he's like, and before I even said the name of the game, he literally finished the sentence for me. He's like, are you gonna build it for WoW? He said WoW, and I'm like, yeah. So it's like, okay, he's like, dude, yeah, no. He's like, if you're building a WoW PC, you better get an Athlon 64. Athlon 64 is like the best gamer CPU, man. It's literally meant for the gamers. And then he started telling me how it's way less money, it's cheaper, it's better, it's faster. So it's like everything he said was so good. I was like, okay, all right, whatever. I'm sold. Let's go with this Athlon 64. So that's how I ended up with the AMD. Also, I had relatives that ran like a mini like system integrator company for a while, and they were telling me AMD Athlon. They only use AMD Athlon because they know it's better. So, yeah, I mean, that's kind of like why my first PC is an AMD Athlon. And it was good. I mean, you guys know, I used it all the way until, like, after StarCraft 2, which means I had it for, like, 5-6 years. And then I went to the Phenom, and the Phenom was good, but at that time, it was not the best thing. And I learned pretty quick that the Intel CPUs were better, but I believed that AMD still was not that bad. So I ended up getting AMD FX 8350, which was 8-core. It was kind of like, I don't know, they said it was an 8-core, 8-thread, but realistically it's more like a 4-core, 8-thread because of the way it had a lot of resource sharing. So I did get the FX 8350. And if you look way back on my channel, some of the way earlier videos where I compare technology, or I featured like technology content, you'll see I made quite a few videos with the FX 8350 back in the day. And I compared it with the Intel i5 3570K. This was the first Intel CPU that I got. This is my very first Intel CPU, because I was playing Guild Wars 2, and Guild Wars 2 was the game that proved to me that I have to get an Intel CPU to truly get to the bottom of why this this performance is the way it is. So I've got an Intel CPU. I'll never forget it. I got my first Intel CPU, i5 3570K, because I got the i5 because everyone was telling me gamers get i5s. Gamers don't get i7s. They buy i5s. That's the gamer CPU. So I was like, well, who's the i7 for? And they're like, oh, don't worry about that. i7 is for the people who are like studying like rocket science, or they're getting a Red Hat certification or something, you know, like i7 is not for you. i7 is for like some other random people. So I was like, okay, let's get an i5. They're like, what's it for? I'm like, it's for gaming. They're like, oh yeah, get an i5. It's the best thing, you know, it's the best thing ever. So I was like, okay, let's get an i5. 3570K. I start playing Guild Wars 2 on the i5 3570K, and yeah, it was better. Minimums were better. The average was smoother. But the 8350 wasn't terrible. It just, everyone was saying it was bad. So I was like, let's get an Intel and see what happens. And yeah, it was fine. And that was my switch to Intel. That's how I switched over. But this was the moment in time where I ended up with like 2 computers. And from that moment, I became a true tech enthusiast. And now here we are with all these computers. Like, I literally have like all the CPUs now. You know what I'm saying? We got the D2. We're using the D2. We have the original X3D king of gaming. We have the no X3D anywhere, just no X3D allowed. And then we've got the Arrow Lake i9 285K. We've got a 13900K behind me in the bookshelf over there, and a bunch of other Intel CPUs and some older AMD CPUs. So that's kind of the story of how I became the true tech enthusiast. So hopefully that answered the question, how did you amass so much hardcore knowledge on computer hardware? But 8350 is fine, man. Like, you know, Steve, I don't know if Steve from Gamers Nexus is still using an 8350, but I remember Steve Burke from Gamers Nexus, he would always kind of like, he wasn't trying to brag, but he would always just low-key mention occasionally that his home PC was an FX 8350. I always found that entertaining when he would say that. Because, I mean, he would say that when, like, the average gamer was on, like, a Ryzen 3000 or 5000 or an Intel 9th gen or 10th gen. And he was saying, like, how he's still on an 8350. And I'm like, dude, wow. I guess. I mean, to me, that means you don't play games on your home PC if you're using that. You've been AMD since AMD Duron? Is AMD Duron, what is that? Is that Opteron? He must play Pac-Man. Yeah. But yeah, my CPU collection, I mean... Wait, why did I delete those? My CPU collection, yeah, I guess my CPU collection... I don't know, let me see. I've got... AMD Athlon 64, 3200 plus. I got AMD Phenom 2 X4 965 BE. I have Intel i5 3570K. I have AMD FX 8350, Intel Core i7. The true swap, because when I went to the i5, for some reason I was never fully satisfied with my Intel PC, because I bought like a low-end motherboard and the i5, and I never liked how the i5 didn't have the 8 threads, how it was 4 cores, 4 threads like my older Phenom. So it didn't really feel, I mean, yeah, it was faster than the Phenom, even though it had the same core count and thread count, but it didn't feel like a true upgrade in the sense that it's still 4 cores, 4 threads. So what I ended up doing was later on, in like 2013, I got the 4770K Haswell. This is the true Intel CPU. When I think of Intel, my time using Intel processors or Intel systems, this is the one that always I think of, because this is the one that I used for a long time. I remember using my first computer for a very long time, for many years, and then this was the next computer. So I used this computer for many years. My first computer, I used the Haswell i7 for many years. It wasn't until Ryzen 7 1800X that I finally returned to AMD. It was like the return of the king. It was like El Cid coming out of exile, living with the Moors for like decades. You know, in his return to Valencia back in the day. So then, ever since then, I mean, I kind of was Ryzen. What did I do? Ryzen 3800X, Was there an Intel CPU in that era? 5800X. Wait, no. Somewhere in here there's Threadripper. This would have been 2019. Somewhere in here was Threadripper 2950X. Yeah. And then... Oh, yeah. This is the thing. Like, I always wanted, like, an Intel... when I started becoming a true, I'll tell you guys, I started becoming a tech enthusiast like I am now around this era. It was kind of like the time of FX A350 and my first Intel i7. This is when I really got into computer hardware, because it's like prior to this, I wasn't like super into computer hardware. But yeah, at that point, so around this time was when I really, really wanted an Intel extreme processor. Like I wanted an HEDT, like, you know, big Intel. I never managed to get one. I didn't have enough money to get one, so I saved up for one, but then I ended up buying Threadripper because the Intels were worse. Like Threadripper was better priced for how many cores you got and how many PCIe lanes compared to the Intel platform. So I always wanted an Intel HEDT. In fact, I still, to this day, I still want an Intel HEDT platform. But I've been on Threadripper, and that's been my HEDT platform since the 2950X. So what else do I have? I've got that, I've got this. This is now we're in the pandemic era. Return of Intel, that's right. Intel Core i7 12700K. There it is. That was the big return from the 4770K and an era of a bunch of Ryzen domination, and then finally my grand return to Intel with the Alder Lake 12700K, because I was so intrigued by E-cores. I just couldn't resist switching to Intel. And then I was so disappointed that I turned off the E-cores in the BIOS. And then I went to my very first Ryzen 9. Ryzen 9 7950X. And then Core, my very first i9. 13900K. And this is when the YouTube channel started becoming a true tech channel. This is that time period. This is when I became a YouTube channel. Like, the true tech channel started around Zen 4 and 13th gen, guys. I remember you. This is around the time when Tech Thursdays started as a weekly show. It was around like 13900K and Zen 4. So now we're getting toward the modern age in terms of the collection. And then what did I get after the 13900K? Oh, duh, Zen 5. Oh no, that's not true. X3D. Oh yeah, X3D. 7950 X3D. I flipped back to AMD because X3D was so good. And then I was like, X3D, you're not new anymore. 9950X, you're newer than the X3D. Get rid of this X3D CPU. Let's go no X3D. I can tell you that was a mistake. That was a mistake. Zen 5 is better than Zen 4 in literally every other thing, except when you have X3D, the Zen 4 is better in gaming. You switched to AMD with 7950X. Oh, that means you remember the days. You remember the early days, man. The early days of DDR5 on AMD was rough. DDR5 on Intel, I avoided DDR5 with 12th gen. Like, I stayed on DDR4, so I completely dodged all the DDR5 issues on Intel, because there were a lot of issues, and DDR5 was stupidly expensive. But AMD, like, if you went to the Ryzen 7000, you were forced to buy DDR5, and it was expensive, and boy, did it need BIOS updates. It needed a lot of BIOS updates. So 13900K was more, it was more mature because Intel learned they fixed all the bugs with DDR5 from 12th gen. So this is the reason why 13900K was way more successful than 750X in terms of like how many units sold. I remember a lot of people bought 13900K over 750X. Even though 750X was easier to cool and used less power, they still went with Intel because the weird problems with the DDR5, like memory training, the sleep issues, suspender RAM, S3 standby legacy mode, all those issues, it took like 4-5 months of BIOS updates to get through all of that. But yeah, 13900K did not have that many issues. So so if you guys remember if you guys started watching my channel around when I truly turned into a tech channel, 750X was my Tech Thursdays computer. 13900K was kind of like my back end, like actual editing computer that I would actually use like for all the production stuff for the channel. Whereas, like, so basically, the way I've always run my channel, I have my front-facing channel, or my front-facing computer. So the one that you guys see for, like, Tech Thursdays and the live streams. This is the one that has all the cameras. This is the one that has the lighting setup, the big OLED monitor, all that stuff. But what you don't see is I have another computer, which is typically the computer that is literally behind me right here. If you can see right there on the floor, there's the case. That computer was the 13900K computer, and that's the one that I would use for like post. That's where all the like YouTube videos that were going to be edited, all the raw footage would be thrown into that computer for editing. So that was the 13900K. And yeah, so I've always been AMD and Intel, so it's not like I favor one over the other. You guys can tell, like, I have access. I've literally used both of them over the years. Now, around the time when I had my first i7, Intel was definitely my main computer, and the 8350 was my backup computer. Because at this point in time, I started operating on redundancy, or what a lot of people in industry would call high availability. So meaning, if something catastrophic happened to my computer, like if it just died, if the GPU inside blew up and melted, or whatever, like, I wouldn't be hard down with no computer to operate. So that's the reason why I always had two computers, one as a redundant backup. So I would always have an Intel and an AMD. But over the years, it has not been like that. It's been like multiple AMD computers and no Intel computers. Like during the time of Threadripper basically replaced my Intel computer, and I never had Intel for many, many years. So I'd be like on Threadripper plus Ryzen. And then E-cores were so intriguing, I had to go and get an Intel computer. And that was during the pandemic. And that was kind of a mistake, because I never really liked the 12700K. And then I went to DDR5. I got an Intel again. And so I was kind of like doing the dual thing. The reason why I was doing the dual thing again was because Threadripper was getting old. Threadripper was old at that point. And then Microsoft was threatening to like no longer support certain CPUs for Windows 11. And unfortunately for me, my Threadripper was on that list. Like, Microsoft was like, your Threadripper is not allowed to run Windows 11. So I was like, okay, screw you, Microsoft. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to switch to Linux. So that's the reason why my Threadripper is a Linux PC now. So when we live stream Linux games, it will be on my Threadripper 2950X. Like, this is literally my Ubuntu desktop. So that's what you will see when we do that. But that's the reason why I got 13900K. I got 13900K because my Threadripper can't run Windows 11. So I was like, I gotta have high availability on Windows 11. So we're gonna do Zen 4 and 13th gen. That's why it is what it is. And we've been operating like that ever since. So I also have Core Ultra 9 285K. So for those of you wondering, that computer literally behind me right now on the floor, that is the Intel Core Ultra 9 285K. That is my Intel desktop. My one and only Intel desktop is right behind me. So we have the AMD computer here. We have the Intel computer back there. And there's nothing wrong with either one. Everybody's like fanboying over one brand over the other. They're both totally fine for productivity. They're both totally fine for gaming. Right now, obviously, AMD's better at gaming. You cannot objectively argue against that. That is literally a fact of life because of how X3D is so dominant. But outside of gaming, both of them are totally similar. Like, they're gonna give you similar results. Now, this D2, this special little D2 that we're streaming on right now, this is the magical CPU. This thing is faster than Intel at everything. This CPU is faster than all the AMD CPUs at everything, and it's also the fastest CPU in gaming. Now, the other thing about the CPU, it is a 200 watt TDP. It has a golden sample CCD, which means if I want to make this even faster, I can overclock the CPU. There's no limits on it, and we're going to do some overclocking content on this channel featuring the D2 CPU. We're going to be using E-clock generator to overclock and push beyond the normal multiplier. We're going to be using curve shaper because curve shaper is far more superior to curve optimizer in terms of the granularity. So that is what we're going to be doing in terms of overclocking content in the future. But for all intents and purposes for this YouTube channel, just to complete this collection of CPUs. Hold on, is that correct? No, that's wrong. Or no, that's right. There we go. There's the collection. There's all the CPUs. We will be covering Nova Lake on this channel. I'm planning to get Nova Lake. So I can tell you, I do plan to get Nova Lake. However, Nova Lake is going to be incredibly expensive to upgrade to. So unless you already have DDR5, Nova Lake is probably going to be a platform that most people avoid due to the price. The BLLC CPUs, what I can say, are going to be very, very expensive. Very expensive. The top-end SKU is going to be around $1,000. So all these people complaining about the X3D2 being $900 and it's too expensive, well, this is a canary in the coal mine. Like, it is a thing that is a preview of things to come in terms of the pricing. The Intel BLLC, the 48 core plus 4 LPE, that is going to be about $1,000. It's a very expensive CPU. 52 core total thread count is a lot. It's a lot. So that's going to be expensive. And you're going to have to buy a new motherboard on top of that. So keep that in mind. So that, upgrading to Nova Lake is no joke. It's going to be like, save now. Actually, if you're wanting to buy Nova Lake, you should have started saving back in December. Just saying. Because the prices are going to be through the roof at launch. Especially because of the memory problem. Now, if you don't need to buy memory, then congratulations if you already have DDR5. I mean, but here's the thing. Here's the thing that nobody really talks about. So, if you want the Core Ultra X9 495KS, or whatever they're going to call this thing. Was this the name that I came up with? I think that's the name. Or 85 or whatever. So, whatever this thing is, if you want this, 16P cores, 32 E cores, plus 4 LPE cores. This is $900. It's either going to be $900, which is basically going to be the same price as the D2, or it's going to be $1,000. I'm going to go ahead and say it's $1,000 because this is a 52 core, 52 thread CPU. 52 core, 52 thread CPU for consumer desktop. That is a lot of cores. Even though most of the cores, 2/3 or more of the CPU, are weaker cores, and there's no hyperthreading on this CPU at all, despite all of that, it's still being marketed as a 52 core, 52 thread. This is the flagship. This has the BLLC. It has BLLC. This is going to be super duper expensive. And then on top of that, you need to calculate how much memory is required for the CPU. So to make things simple, I'm going to pretend that the 4 LPE do not exist. So we're going to calculate 4, okay, here's what I'm going to say. 4 GB RAM per P core. 2 GB RAM per E core. We're going to ignore LPE. I'm not going to allocate any RAM to them. So now we got to do the math. 16 times 4. So you need 64 GB minimum for just the P cores. For P cores. This is minimum spec for the CPU. This is the reason why I'm telling you guys now, it is no joke if you want to go to Nova Lake's best, because you're going to need to have a lot of DDR5. Just warning you now. Now, for the E cores, 32 times 2. That means you need 64 more gigabytes additional for E cores. So that means, ignoring the LPE cores, that means recommended RAM required for Nova Lake, for I guess for the 495K, equals 128 gigabytes of DDR5. So I'm just gonna be straight with the people who want to get Nova Lake. If you want that flagship 52 core, you better have 128 gigabytes of DDR5. Otherwise, you're not going to have the best experience on that CPU, because the scheduler is going to throw things into RAM and move it all the time. You're just going to have stuttering. It's going to be terrible. So you better bring the RAM. If you can't bring 128 gigs of RAM on day one for that Ultra Core 9 whatever flagship Nova Lake, you're not going to be getting that CPU. You're not going to have a good time with that CPU if you don't have 128 gigs of DDR5. So that's the thing. How much is 128 gigs of DDR5 right now? That's the question. Because if you don't have 128 gigs, you don't qualify. In my mind, that's how it is. Like, that's what it means to be an enthusiast. So let's look this up real quick, because I'm actually curious to see how much. I haven't looked at RAM prices in a while. Let me see here. If we go to the RAM. Hold up, where is, oh, there it is. Oh, check this out. Micro Center has a D2 bundle already, 3-in-1 combo for $1,200. You can get a D2 with an X870E MSI Pro motherboard and 32 gigs of Corsair Vengeance RAM. To me, that sounds like a pretty good deal, because the CPU by itself is $900. So for $300 more, you get RGB gamer RAM, 32 gigs of RAM, which is not a lot of RAM, but I mean, in this market, it's decent. And then you get a full-blown X870E, not X870, not B650 or B850. No, none of that peasant stuff. No, You get the full dual chipset X870E. So to me, that's actually a pretty good deal, man. If you live near a micro center right now, my goodness, these guys got the deals. Alright, but let's look. Desktop memory. Preparing for Nova Lake. We need 128 gigs. Minimum spec. Minimum spec. So how much is it going to cost to get 128 gigs? Let's see. What is this? Filter by 128. Oh my. Oh no, that's. Oh, that. Oh Lord, look at those prices. Oh, I'm almost had a heart attack. I almost had a heart attack. $4,000 for 128 gigs. Now this is ECC. So this is Threadripper RAM. So thankfully this is Threadripper RAM. So this is not the right RAM. I almost fell out of my chair, man, when I saw that. That's sticker shock. $4,000. Oh my goodness. All right, hold on. Let's go to 64. DDR5. And we need... Good lord, these prices are bad. This is some scary stuff. Lowest price. Show me the money. Oh my goodness. This is only half of what we need. We need to buy 2 of these. 2 of these. The cheapest one, DDR5 5200. This isn't even the gamer stuff. No, where's my DDR5 6400? This is like a nightmare. Are you serious? Where's my 6400? Okay, team. $815 for 64 gigs. We need to buy 2 of them for 4 sticks. This is the reason why not a lot of people are going to be able to afford the flagship Nova Lake at launch. It's because of DDR5. The chip itself is going to be like $1,000. Now you got to spend like, what is that, $1,600 for RAM? $1,600 for RAM, $1,000 for the CPU. That's almost $3,000, and you still need the motherboard. This is the reason why they're trying to like push gamers. They're trying to push enthusiasts out of the market by just ramping up the prices to drive everybody to cloud gaming. Yeah, you're gonna need to buy 2 of these because you need 128. Oh, okay, hold on. I got an idea. What about the 2x64? What if we wanted to do 2 sticks? I don't like the look of 2 sticks, but we might not have a choice. Okay, here's some other choices. Here's 128 gigs on 2 sticks. This is 64 gig DIMMs per stick. This is actually going to save money. Yeah, you can get Corsair Vengeance. Corsair Vengeance. Oh, is this nasty JDEC? This is disgusting JDEC RAM. 1.1 volt CL42. This is JDEC. This isn't even like XMP. Why does it say XMP? Corsair is a liar. This is straight up lying. That's fake marketing right there. Where's what is up with these CL42? Oh, they have to be because they're so dense. Okay, that's why. All right, I was wrong. Corsair's not lying. It's because it's super dense. I forget that it's 64 gig DIMM. So yeah, 2 of these is 128. So literally, you got to spend $1,600 for RAM, $1,000 for the CPU. So you're at $2,600. Then you got to buy like a $500 motherboard just so you can get a postcode debug. So you're gonna spend over $3,000 just to upgrade to Nova Lake if you want to be on the highest end Nova Lake with the BLLC, with the full 16 P cores. Know what I'm saying? So, because who wants to be on those anemic 8 P cores in 2027? That sounds awful. So it's like, yeah, dude, we're talking $3,000. You got to save up if you want Nova Lake. I'm just telling you right now, public service announcement. If you want Nova Lake, you better save $3,000 minimum between now and the end of the year. Or at least now in like November. Just saying. My goodness. My goodness, this is ugly. $1,600. Oh man. Wow. So if you, this is what I'm saying. I am so glad I have my RAM ready. I got my RAM ready, man. I don't have to buy RAM. I'm good. But jeez, this is bad. This is bad. For me, I'm allocating about 1,000 for the CPU and about 500 for the motherboard. I'm gonna allocate $1,500 to upgrade to Nova Lake. That's how much I estimate I'll have to spend personally to get Nova Lake at launch, because I don't have to buy RAM. But most people are probably gonna have to buy RAM if they want to run at recommended spec. Now, having said all of this, 128 gigs is the correct number for the top-end Nova Lake. However, you can get away with 96. 96 is gonna be okay for Nova Lake, just because Windows will not like push up to that amount of RAM in terms of the normal usage, and neither would Linux. So it's okay to be on 96, but I definitely don't recommend 64 gigs or lower if you want that 52 core Nova Lake. You're definitely gonna want 96, or ideally you want 128, but 96 is okay. Like 96, my reasoning behind 96 is because if you drop the E-core RAM requirement from 2 gigs per core to 1 gig per core, you could end up with 96 gigs and that'll be fine. So that's why 96 is okay. It's kind of like how I tell people, if you're on a 16-core CPU, you should have 64 gigs of RAM, but it's okay to run at 48 gigabytes of RAM if you want to run really fast DDR5. It's the same reasoning. So that's okay. How are you going to use SOCAMM 2? Do you have any idea how much SOCAMM 2 costs? If you think this is expensive, I don't think you're ready to see the price of SOCAMM 2. Just saying. We'll just leave it at that. You know, I would much rather buy this than to buy SOCAMM 2. Realistically, the RAM that you're going to want, though, is QDIM. I just now realized we need QDIM for these new Intels. So, where's my QDIM? Where's my QDIM at? Oh, I just realized QDIMs are 48 gig kids. They're somewhere around here. There they are. Okay, yeah, this is... But paying for this speed, if you're gonna run 4 sticks, is pointless. So realistically, you're kind of stuck. Actually, I think they're gonna do something with like Gear 4, if I'm not mistaken. So maybe this makes sense. But again, you'd have to buy 2 of them. So you'd have to buy... what is this? 48? This one? No. You'd have to buy this from Corsair. You have to buy 2 of these. So that would be $2,000. You have to spend $2,000 for a QDIM. And then even then, this probably doesn't even work at this speed when you're doing 4 sticks. So you would be running at like 6,400 on QDIM. This is it. This is the Cam 2. Cam 2, but it's not actual physical Cam 2. It's clock driver, but it's on standard UDIM. Feel like we're shopping for motorcycles because of the pricing. So remember, you gotta buy 2 of these to get the correct capacity, because we're gonna need 96 gigs as a recommended spec. So that's $2,000 on RAM, $1,000 for the CPU. You're already at $3,000. You need a $500 motherboard. So we're at, you know, $3,500 out the door, plus tax. This is so dumb. This is so dumb talking about like this because of the RAM. Okay, what about Zen 6? What about Zen 6? Is basically the same scenario. The only difference is you can get away with like slightly less RAM, because it has less physical cores, but they're larger cores, so you're gonna need 4. So let's do an AMD build now. Let's talk about the AMD Zen 6, the successor to the D2. All right, so we recommend anywhere from 96 to 128 gigs for Intel's best Nova Lake. Based off of this, it can either be 1 gig. You can substitute this 2 down to like a 1G instead, and that's okay for the E-cores. But anyway, that would be the ideal spec to not run with memory incoherency, is what I think they call it. So a lot of gamers don't know that. See, a lot of people don't realize that. They probably wonder, like, how come their PC runs lame, or it runs like weird compared to someone else who doesn't have the problem. It's typically because they don't have enough system RAM. That's actually the reason. System RAM actually matters, and the thing is, system RAM actually scales with your core count. So the higher end your CPU is, the more cores your CPU is, the more inherent RAM that you actually need to feed the cores consistently. This is called, because remember, there's something called cache coherency, which is what X3D is really good at, but there's also memory coherency, which you hear less people talk about, because the operating system also tries to focus on memory coherency. And when you have a lot of cores, you're going to need more RAM naturally, because memory coherency, the operating system tends to want to spread things out. So it wants certain cores will have, Windows will, or Linux does this too, any OS, any modern OS will allocate blocks of RAM for a single core, for each core. So the more cores you have, the more memory space you naturally need the OS to be able to allocate to a given core. This is the reason why the higher end someone's CPU is, the more RAM they need, whether they know it or not. And that's the reason why I tell people, it's like, you don't want to go with like a Core Ultra 9 or a Ryzen 9 flagship if you're just going to play games and you plan on like gimping your CPU with 32 gigs of RAM, because you're just asking for trouble. If you test it that way, it might be okay for like some random benchmarks, but if you're using it every day with a bunch of apps running, it's not going to be the best experience. So for AMD, Ryzen 9, 9, what are they going to call this thing? 10950X 3D? 10950X, we'll just go with that. 10950X 3D. This is going to be 24 core, 48 thread. This will be the highest end Zen 6 CPU. The ultimate CPU from AMD. 24 cores, 48 threads. That is 12 cores on one CCD, plus 12 more cores on another CCD. That's how you get that 24 core, 24P core. So what does that mean? That means we need 4 GB per core. So what does that mean? 96? So you need 96 for the AMD. So I'm good, because I'm already on 96 gigs, so I don't have to buy any RAM for the AMD system. For the Intel, ideally I want to be at 128, but 96 will be fine. So if you're not on 96 gigs today, you're behind the curve. If you're someone who truly desires to upgrade to one of these flagship CPUs from AMD or Intel, and not have memory coherency problems with the operating system. So that's basically what's needed. You see how I'm calculating this? 24 times 4, 96. So the AMD one is more straightforward because it's all P cores. It's very simple. P cores need 4 gigs per core. This is the rule of thumb. You talk to an Adobe software engineer, that's what they're going to tell you. You talk to a CAD developer, that's what they're going to tell you. So, because people ask me all the time, where do you get this number? Like, how do you determine 4 GB per core? This is like a standard computer architecture design guideline that app developers use when they build their applications. So that's the magic number, guys. 96 is the magic number. So I'm actually really happy to see that, because I'm someone who has standardized around 96 gigabytes of DDR5 for the last like 3 years. I've been at 96 gigs since 2023, or actually, is that right? Yeah, 2023. 2023, maybe 2024, but sometime in 2023, 2024, you guys can go find my YouTube videos on RAM, so that'll be the proof. But somewhere around that time is when I made the jump to 96 gigs, and boy, that is some clairvoyance level big brain move, because I had no idea that the memory prices would get to the way they are now. So I am so glad that I'm already at that 96 gig number, because that is the magic number for Zen 6 and also Intel BLLC Ultimate Flagship Nova Lake. So I'm done. I'm good. I'm good. I got RAM. All I gotta do is save up for CPUs and motherboards. That's all I gotta do. I don't have to save up for RAM. Thank God. Oh my goodness. D2 is outselling every Intel CPU on Amazon. Well, that's because it's new, man. I don't know if it's gonna sustain itself that long, because it's so expensive. It's just because it's the new hot thing. That's everyone's gonna want to like gravitate to whatever is brand new, and you know the funny thing is there's a lot of people that it's like it's getting mixed reviews because it's so expensive, but the reality is it's the best of the best, and yeah, it's stupidly expensive. But the problem is these new CPUs, these CPUs are also gonna be stupidly expensive. Anyone who thinks otherwise is out of touch with reality and hasn't been following the tech industry news. So, can I explain how it works? Basically, it's a region of cache that so what I don't know about it is I don't know if the E-cores have access to it. If the E-cores have access to it, then that could either ruin performance or, like, maximize performance. It's really going to come down to how the E-cores interact with it, if they even interact with it. Because remember, Intel is jam-packing a lot of E-cores in these new Nova Lake CPUs. And the E-core, they're all in on E-cores. They don't care if the gamers don't like E-cores. They're all in on E-cores. They are not going away from E-cores. Like the fact that they're shoving 32 E-cores in the top-end SKU, that is the proof that they are all heavily invested in E-cores. So if the E-cores have access to the last level cache, I don't know what that means for like game performance, because game performance probably will run terribly because of the E-cores just not being fast compared to the P-cores. So it could be a double-edged sword. It could help with multi-thread apps for sure. The same way the D2 benefits from the extra cache for all the cores. So it kind of depends on how the last level is set up. Like, do the E-cores have access to the last level? Do they not have access? If they don't have access, then it's only for the P-cores. So then you're going to want a lot of P-cores. And the only one that has the 16 P-cores is the super high-end flagship. So, I don't know. Personally, if I'm going to get Nova Lake, I'm going for this one, because this is the only one that has like a higher P-core count. And if they're going with the BLLC, I think the P-cores will get the most benefit from BLLC. I could be wrong. Maybe the E-cores will benefit more. It's too early to tell without actually seeing the architecture. But it'll be an interesting CPU. Four E-cores get one 8 megabyte tile. Two P cores share two 8 megabyte tiles. Or 12 megabyte tiles. I don't know why I said 8 megabyte. Two P cores share two. Okay, so how would that look? How will that look? You're saying two P cores. So you have two P cores. How would we draw this? There's 16 of them though. It's a lot. So we have two P cores. Two P cores share a 12 megabyte tile. And then 4 E cores. 1, 2, 3, 4 share a what? Share a 2 megabyte or a 12 megabyte tile. Okay, so then you would duplicate these things. So you'd literally have this. Two, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, and then you would duplicate these a bunch of times. So this is gonna be 32 of these. This is a lot. 4, 8, 12, 16, and then you basically double up to 32. So it would look kind of like this. Okay, so what is this? 12 times 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 12 times 8, so that's 96. It's 96 megabytes of the cache. Are you sure this is last level though? And then 4 get 1, so 12 times 1, 2, 3, 2, 4, 6, 8. 12 times 8, so that's 96. So 96 times 2. So you're going to end up with 192 megabytes of cache. That's the total cache for P and E cores. That's the number I got with the math, based on what you just said. So that's what it's going to look like. It's going to look something like this. They're going to probably... So this... I just realized something. So basically... This... They can cut it in half and sell half to a gamer. Yeah, they can cut it in half and sell half of it to a gamer. And they call it the gamer one. And then this one is like the true flagship one. Yeah, that's what I just said. You cut it in half and you get an 8 and a 16. You get 2, 4, 6, 8 P cores. 4 times 4, 16 E cores. That's your 8 plus 16 right there. You chop this thing in half, you get 8 plus 16. You double up, you get 16 plus 32. You chop it in half. You cut this thing in half, and that's basically... Or they can chop it this way. Whoops, they can chop it this way. You just chop it in half this way. So now it's like, okay, I can chop it this way. This is still 8 plus 16. This is 8 plus 16. This is interesting. Yeah, Intel's basically following AMD. They're doing like this all chiplet stuff. They can chop it up even more too. Like they can chop it up like I just thought of another one. They can chop it up like this. Chop it up. Quad core, 4P core plus 8E core. They can chop it up. There's your Core Ultra 5 or 3 or whatever. They can chop it up, man. It's like I feel like I'm making a pizza. These are the toppings. They can chop it up. The AMD one. Let's look at the AMD one now. That's the Intel one. AMD. Here it is. AMD. AMD. Okay, let's go. AMD one is how is this gonna look? I guess this is enough space. AMD is gonna look like this. They're gonna do. I like how Intel keeps telling me I have an Intel Arc driver update. They're gonna do like this. 1, 2, I guess, like this. I don't have enough room to match this to scale, but we're just gonna run with it. And the IO die is gonna be like this or something. And then they have in here, there's 12. So how are we gonna draw this? Like 1. I really need more space. I gotta get rid of this stuff in the middle. Like, hold on. We gotta clean this up. Clean all this off. I don't need any of this stuff. We're done talking about these things. Okay. The AMD one is gonna be like this. So the Intel one also is gonna have like a graphics tile or something over here. They're gonna put like integrated graphics. They're gonna have like an NPU for AI somewhere wasting space, and they're gonna put some other stuff. So the AMD one is gonna be like this. I'll just draw it where it's like upside down because it's easier. They've got this. They've got the 2 CCDs, and then they've got the big, brand new, big fat IO die. So in here, we have 12 cores. 1. Can I make this? Hold up. Two, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Oh, I guess it's a little bit too big, but whatever. You guys get the idea. 10, 11, 12. You get all these P cores in here. And then they have this duplicated on the other CCD. So we're just going to like copy this. Throw it over here. There's your other CCD. All right, this is the AMD one. So this one right here is basically Nova Lake Flagship. And this one is Zen 6 Flagship. Zen 6 Flagship. So this one, I'm going to call this one Ryzen 9 10950X 3D, or just whatever. And then this one is Ultra X9 49. It's either 495K or 485K. I think it's going to be 95K because it's so many cores. So this is the flagship Intel. This is the flagship AMD. Down here, they're going to have some crazy stuff in here. They're going to have the big new Radeon integrated graphics. They're going to have a brand new memory controller. They're going to have a bunch of SerDes lanes. You know, there's some stuff in here. You know, they might have an AI processor just like the Intel one. They might put some other stuff in there. Okay, so look at this though. So this you got a bunch of SerDes lanes. So I think they're gonna do SerDes lanes, although they could do. I don't think AMD is gonna do sea of wires, like they did for Strix Halo with the big sea of wires. They got a whole bunch of wires under here. I do think AMD is going to move more toward Intel's tile system, and Intel's going to move more towards like changing the interconnects slightly. So because really what they both need, AMD needs more higher speed interconnects, which is what they're going to do. Intel, I don't really know what they need to change. I know they're going with the same strategy that they use with Arrow Lake. They're just packing in more with the new node shrink. LPE cores. There could be LPE cores on the AMD one, but keep in mind, I didn't draw the LPE cores on the Intel one. I don't know where they are, and I don't know where the AMD one is either. And if even if they have them, but frankly, I don't care about the LPE cores because they're not gonna do anything. So I mean, especially if you're on Linux, I have no idea what the LPE cores do if you're on Linux. So they're just kind of there. And then so you have these things. So here we have 4, 8, 12, 16 P cores. Oh, we need to turn this thing off. This is in the way. So we have 16 P cores on the Intel. On the AMD, we have 12 plus 12, 24 P cores. Assuming they're all P cores. On the Intel, we have 16 plus 16, 32 E cores. Intel no longer has hyperthreading. They will not have hyperthreading for Nova Lake. This is confirmed by the CEO. He's already said this publicly. So there's no hyperthreading. So that means what you see is what you get. 1 core, 1 thread. That means 48 cores, 48 threads. 16 plus 32. AMD uses Dragon Ball Z split fusion technique, or tri-technique, whatever you want to call it, from the Saiyan saga. So basically every single AMD core has a left hand and a right hand. Intel cores, since Arrow Lake or Meteor Lake, only have one hand. They only have a right hand or a left hand. They don't have two hands anymore. But AMD CPUs have two hands. So they are dual threaded. That means they double up. So if you have 24 cores, you have 48 threads. So that means they're going to have the same thread count. AMD has been ahead of Intel in thread count for some time now, ever since Intel abandoned hyperthreading. So Intel will finally be able to close the gap on thread count because of the sheer number of E-cores that they're going to shove on this thing. So that's how they're going to make up the difference. Now, a core can be better than a thread. So don't count that out. Like, they can still come back. In fact, I would go so far as to say that even though AMD has 48 thread count matching Intel, the physical E-cores, just because of the sheer number of E-cores, I expect Nova Lake will probably have better peak multi-thread performance over Zen 6 just because of the sheer volume of E-cores that are dense packed into this consumer desktop CPU. So very, very interesting approach from Intel's side. They figured, hey, we don't need hyperthreading. We can just go throw a ton of cores at the problem and just get that thread count up. So that'll be really interesting to see. Chip over wafer over substrate is what I would expect. Okay. But this is it, guys. This is the ultimate. These are the two ultimate enthusiast class flagship CPUs that we can expect to see launching at the end of this year. Intel will probably launch first. I expect to see Nova Lake first before the end of this year. So if you're someone who is thinking about getting the so personally, this is the reason why I don't recommend the 270K. You see all these influencers are talking about how the 270K, it's such good value, and they're not wrong. Like objectively speaking, anyone saying that the Core Ultra 7 270K plus is a good CPU, they are correct. It is a good value CPU. There is nothing wrong with the price point, the amount of threads you're getting. The value proposition is there. But there's a reason. There's a reason why it is priced at $300. The reason why it's $300 is because Intel knows. Intel knows deep down in their soul that they have a vastly more superior platform on the horizon. And they know that people, they don't want to come across as disingenuous in trying to charge like $500 for a Core Ultra 9 290K plus, which is just a factory overclocked 270K plus, or a better binned 270K plus, when they know that if someone spends that much money on the existing Arrow Lake desktop, they're locking themselves in for that platform. There is no upgrade beyond the 270K plus. It is the end of the line. It is the end of days for that platform. That is the reason why it is priced at $300, because they know that they can't really entice people by having a higher price point, knowing that the true enthusiasts already know that they have something better ready to launch in a couple of quarters. This is the reason why I don't recommend the 270K. This is why I didn't buy a 270K, and I won't buy a 270K. I don't need one. I mean, personally, I don't even really need the D2, but the D2 is interesting because I don't think AMD is going to necessarily repeat the D2. They have proven, they said, you don't need 3D V-Cache on the second CCD, and they kind of prove themselves correct. They prove themselves right in the public's eyes by launching the D2, just because everyone was like, okay, give us the D2. Okay, there's your D2. There you go. There's the numbers. It's like, what, 2% better? 3% better? But at least it's something that's unique, unlike the 270K Plus, which is on a dead platform, and it's end of the line. And I know there's a true enthusiast platform lurking in the background. So that's the reason why I'm not buying an Intel right now. Because now is not the time to be buying Intel. Because you see all these people like, oh, the 270K is the only one that matters. Okay, go buy your 270K. Go spend that money, that $300, and go be happy with that 270K. But don't come to me with buyer's remorse in a couple of quarters when Nova Lake launches, and I'm on Nova Lake, and you're on your 270K Plus, and I'm on Thunderbolt 5, and I'm enjoying all the cores and threads, because I said don't buy Arrow Lake. Because, I mean, all I'm going to say is I told you so. See, that's what I'm saying. So, Nova Lake's going to be the platform to watch out for when it comes to Intel. And then Zen 6 is going to be a huge change for AMD. One of the biggest changes in the history of Ryzen CPUs is going to come with Zen 6. Because Zen 6 is the first time in a long time that AMD is increasing the amount of cores per CCD. So the gamer CPU of choice, why can't I spell? Gamer CPU of choice, or I guess the gamer's CPU, or the gamer's champion CPU, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, whatever the marketers want to call it, is going to be the Ryzen 7 10800X3D. And this is the CPU to be on the lookout for if you're a gamer. Because this CPU is going to be a 12-core CPU. A 12-core, 24-thread, single CCD. So the first time in history, the gamers will finally get a core and thread count bump. Significant bump to 12-core, 24-thread on a single CCD with X3D V-Cache on that CCD. So that is going to be the one. That is probably going to be the best gamer CPU. Now, Intel's going to have... It's interesting because Intel's going to have another, like a gamer CPU. This is not the gamer CPU. Just like this is also kind of not the gamer... It's not the intended gamer CPU. These are known as the flagship Halo tier products. But Intel's gamer CPU is going to consist of... We'll just cut it up this way, just because, I mean, well, actually, hold on, let's just do it this way. Yeah, we can do it this way, chop it up. The gamer Intel CPU, and we're running out of space. Let's just put it down here. The gamer Intel, yeah, actually, we can do this, okay. Well, I got a lot of space. All right, gamer Intel and gamer AMD. So you got your gamer Intel and you got your gamer Ryzen. This is going to be the gamer Intel. Gamer's Intel CPU. Core, Ultra, X7 or X9. It might be X9. I don't know. It's either X7 or X9. 275K. Or maybe the 485K or 475K. I'm not sure how they're gonna name it. We'll just run with this one for now, I guess. But oh no, hold on, let's just do 85K. It can either be the X7 485K or the X9. I don't think it would make sense personally to call it the X9 because the 9 is the one that has like all these P cores and E cores. So I kind of think it should be the 7. But Intel will also up the core count. Actually, now that I think about it, it should be the 7 because the 27K Plus right now is an 8P core, 32 or 16E core. So this will be 8P core, 16E core, plus 4... Let's just ignore 4 LPE because someone said earlier that there was a rumor that the Zen 6 will also have LPE somewhere. So we'll just leave it at this. So this is going to be, again, 24-thread CPU. So AMD and Intel are going to have some really interesting gamer like toe-to-toe gaming focused CPUs. 12P core, 24-thread versus 8P core plus 16E core, no hyper-thread, but still 24-thread. This is going to be the ultimate gamers showdown, guys. I'm calling it right now. This is the ultimate showdown between Intel and AMD. This is like the episode Face Off on Namek or something on Dragon Ball Z, the Namek saga. So it's going to be awesome to see this play out. But like personally, I don't plan on getting either one of these. I don't care about either one of these because you guys know me. I'm into the flagships. I want this one and I want this one. I don't care about these gamer stuff. But I recognize that most gamers want the gamer stuff. So more power to them. Now they have options. They got a 24-thread Intel option. They got a 24-thread AMD option. It's going to be some really good stuff. 2026 is a terrible year for computer hardware. Unless you're a big fan of the D2 or you really, really like Arrow Lake. Otherwise, this year is not a good year to be buying computer hardware. This is a year to be stockpiling money so you can afford these upgrades next year, because next year is going to be the year. Because those of you that are in the know, you guys know RTX 6090 May 2027 or June. Be ready, RTX 6090. So now is the time to be saving up money if you want to do the true upgrade next year, if you know what I'm saying. And then we got PS6. PS6 is coming next year too, but that's later on. So we got RTX, we'll just say RTX 6090 Q2 2027, and we have PS6 Q4. Technically, I already know the month, but we'll just ignore the month. 2027. So we got some high-end stuff. We got PS6, we got 6090 coming in. Next year is the year. This year is a off-season year for computer upgrades as far as I'm concerned. RDNA 5, yeah, man. 2027 is where it's at. But this is gonna be the ultimate showdown. I can tell you right now, this is gonna be the match of the century. This is gonna be the showdown of the decade, because it's like, I don't even know what this is. This is like Vegeta gaining Super Saiyan 4 in GT and going up against Goku. This is gonna be like an excellent matchup, though. Oh man, I can't wait. The gamer CPU showdown of the decade. Okay. Well, we didn't get to do anything that I planned to do. This turned into a repeat of last weekend, where I talked for like 2 hours. Last Friday we talked about computer monitors for an hour, and then we talked about Linux for like another hour. So I didn't even get a chance to play Pragmata. I was gonna play Pragmata again, but apparently, well, I guess we're not gonna play it. I guess we're not gonna play it. So much for the D2. Talking about all these other new CPUs, man. Who cares about the D2 and the Core Ultra 27K Plus? 27K Plus is trash compared to this stuff, as far as I'm concerned. Dead socket, no upgrade path, man. Who would buy that now? Knowing what we know about these things? Oh my goodness. You're retrying so many older games. I'll have to look into it. I remember you mentioning it multiple times. Alright, well, I mean, I didn't expect to talk about the new CPUs. I feel like this topic should have been a Tech Thursdays thing. Maybe we'll turn this into, I don't know, like its own YouTube video. Do you guys think this is worthy of being a YouTube video? It's so all over the place. It's just me just randomly talking about products that aren't even in the market yet. It's all mostly educated guessing and speculation. And for the record, I haven't watched any, I haven't watched any Moore's Law is Dead videos. The last time I watched a Moore's Law is Dead video was like 2 years ago. So I have no idea what the rumors are. I'm literally just doing this based off of my own understanding of where I expect the next generation CPUs to land. You are the tech guy. If you're lucky, we get 6900 XT generation uplift over RDNA 1. We will. Keep in mind, it's been too many years. Keep in mind, it's been many years, guys. Many years. Do you really think that the engineers have been sitting around doing nothing, twiddling the thumbs for 4 years? That's not how it works. Those people wouldn't keep their job. RDNA 5 will yes, it'll be faster than 5090. I expect the fastest AMD card to be faster than 5090. Let's pose this question. 6900 XT versus 2080 Ti. Who was faster? Who was faster? because now we can simply substitute the mathematics. Because now I'll reveal the true identity of these two GPUs. The true identity of this GPU is not the 6900 XT. This is actually RDNA 5 flagship versus RTX 5090. You substitute the 6900 XT as the new flagship, and you take the 2080 Ti and you substitute that in as the 5090, and that is kind of the comparison that you're going to be looking at. So yeah, that's what we're looking at. It's definitely going to be faster than 5090 because 5090 is going to be old.
GTR is the real hardware enthusiast channel. Some larger channels are just trying to get views by spreading hate.
Spreading hate? Well, I don't know if larger channels are spreading hate. I think I understand where you're going with that, but I don't think it's necessarily hate. It's more like sensationalism. That's really what it is, because they know that bad publicity can also be good publicity, because publicity is publicity, and even if it's bad news, it's going to get views, it's still going to get reactions. And the ironic thing is the companies stand to benefit like either way. So like someone said earlier that the 9950 X3D2, a CPU that basically every reviewer that got a review sample of this is saying don't buy it. Even people who didn't even get a review sample were saying don't buy it. And guess what CPU is outselling all the Intel CPUs on Amazon right now? Yeah, the super expensive D2 is a top seller on Amazon right now. Why? Even though all the influencers said don't buy one, people still went and bought one. So it's because it's new and it's a novel, interesting thing. So that's what I mean when I say even bad publicity is still, in a way, good publicity. Because you think about the D2. The D2 isn't doing anything malicious. It's an expensive CPU, but it's still a good CPU. You can't say it's a bad CPU. Its performance numbers are at the top of the charts for a consumer desktop platform. Its gaming numbers are the best there is. It's right up there with all the other X3Ds. So it delivers on what it is meant to do. You know, be a Halo tier product. So, but you know, people are gonna say, well, it's expensive, so don't buy it. You can save money by getting something that's lower cost, like a regular, like one of these, like a regular traditional 9950 X3D, you know, for $200 less, or maybe even $250 less, because this is typically on sale quite often on Newegg and Micro Center. So most people are better off, and I would agree with reviewers, you know, like the 9950 X3D is a very, very good CPU. It's no slouch, man. Like, that thing is still really, really good. But people are just going to do what they want to do. That's just how it is. They're spreading misinformation and clickbaiting their audience into getting angry. Well, that's what I mean when they're doing it to get reactions. Sensationalism. Yeah, it's sensationalism. But the thing is, there's a lot of sensationalism right now. Sensationalism, unfortunately, seems like it's a trending thing right now in media, just because there's a lot of negative things happening in the world. Like, not even related to tech. Like, there's a lot of negative things that we always talk about. Obviously, DDR5 pricing, SSD pricing, and then how I think the really bad thing is that manufacturers and electronic companies that sell you products are literally piling on the bandwagon. It's like, okay, if memory is more expensive, now we can justify raising our prices. It's like, okay, smartphones can get more expensive, cars can get more expensive, appliances can get more expensive. I mean, all the tech enthusiasts know that all the other computer parts, like computers, are just getting more expensive. Laptops are going to get more expensive because of the memory. Like everything is just, it's like an excuse to literally just make everything electronic more expensive, except for like a few exceptions. Like computer monitors aren't really going up in price right now. So now would actually be a good time to consider getting an OLED if you're someone who's on the fence. Or look at upgrading some other thing. Or you could be like me and just start saving up money for these next generation platforms that I know are going to be the new thing next year. So that would probably be the smart move, to be honest. But yeah, that's just the thing right now. Like sensationalism, just because there's so much negativity. Yeah, it is what it is. I have noticed though that there has been a trend in terms of views going down across the board for like all tech channels, or not all tech channels, but most tech channels. Even Linus mentioned this a few months ago, that the view counts have gone down for tech related content. And it's really because the prices of everything is so expensive. Like when memory and SSDs cause everything around them to also start creeping up in price, not at extreme levels that we're seeing, not at the extreme levels that we're seeing as memory and SSDs, but they're still artificially going up. People are naturally going to become less interested in building PCs as a hobby. Like tech enthusiasts are slowly gonna like phase out of being truly enthusiastic about the technology, and they're gonna want to do other things. You know, I kind of felt the same way at the start of this year. You guys remember at the start of this year, what did I do? I started focusing on retro content. I started looking at retro consoles, PS3, 360. We did that for like a month and a half. And then I kind of went back to computer hardware, but I noticed like there's not a lot of interest in computer hardware right now because everything is just stupidly expensive. No one wants to bother spending money on it. And I don't blame them, because now is not a good time to be buying memory and SSDs. I mean, I wanted to get an SSD so I could build another Linux dist. Like I wanted to play around with like Nobara or some other Linux distro. And it's like, I'm not going to buy an SSD for Linux right now, because it's like, I don't want to spend that much money on the SSD. When I'm so used personally, this is how much I spend on SSDs. Okay, you guys want to know how much I spend for SSDs? 4 terabyte equals $200. So show me an SSD that you can buy today for $200 or less that has 4 terabyte capacity. The answer is there isn't an option. It's impossible. Or alternatively, 2 terabyte for $100 or less, like $90 for a 2 terabyte SSD. You can't do that anymore. In this current market, you can't do it. So it's like, I'm not going to buy an SSD. So now I can't mess with another Linux distro unless I want to like delete my Ubuntu one or partition. And I don't even want to bother partitioning. Or I got to pull an SSD out of one of my systems that I'm using as a storage drive to convert that to a Linux machine. So it's like, I don't really want to do any of that. So it becomes unobtainium. So I don't blame people for not being interested in computer hardware, because if I'm used to spending this type of money on SSDs, it's like, I'm definitely not going to buy SSDs in this market. So that's, I mean, it kind of hurts the content, I guess. I was thinking of doing more retro content again, but there wasn't much interest in that either. So I don't really know what to do. That's why now the channel's literally just become Tech Thursdays plus some random weekend stream. That's kind of what my channel's turned into. If I had more time, and if the view counts were really there for a lot of the other types of videos, because I've seen like the trend go down, and it's not just me. Like other larger channels that are far more dependent on YouTube as a platform, they're also suffering, man. Like they're probably suffering more than I am, because it's like I'm less dependent on YouTube, but because I do this as a hobby. I do this because I'm a true tech enthusiast. But that's the thing. Like it's just kind of everything's just gone downhill since the end of last year. What I consider the meta. Well, just so you know, I'm someone who prefers to be anti-meta. So it's like when everybody goes one way, I tend to like go the other way. Like when everyone focuses on, an energy efficient GPU, I always want to go with the other one. That's why I was a huge fan of the 3090 Ti. I actually really like the 3090 Ti because it's stupidly high power consumption and it can trip OCP on a lot of old power supplies. But yeah, so I don't know if I'm the type of person that'll recommend meta builds in terms of like PC hardware, because I tend to go, I tend to do things that you never hear people recommend. Like for example, when you hear someone like, oh, they'll tell you if you're building a PC, 32 gigs of RAM is enough. I don't believe that. I will never believe that. For me, 48 gigabytes is the minimum spec for a gaming PC in 2026. But for me, it's 96 gigs or go home. It's basically that. You either go 96 gigs or you just don't build a computer. That's my philosophy. So that's kind of the advice that I'll tell you is like 48 gigs or 96. Those are the two numbers. I don't care about 64. I don't care about 32. 64 is acceptable. But 48 is actually better if you want to run fast memory. And 96 is the ideal. So I've been on 96 gigabytes since I think early 2023, and I've never looked back. So I've never had to worry about scheduling, conflicts with memory, coherency with Windows 11. And I'm the type of person, I'm a power user. So I'm not someone who's just going to load up a game on my computer and have like nothing else running. No, we're going to have like tons of background things running. That's why you can see even right now, I'm using 23 gigabytes of system memory and I'm literally doing nothing. I have Paint open, the stream software, the browser's open with like 7 or 8 tabs, and we're using up this much memory. So, I mean, Steam is open. Yeah, Steam's open. And Intel keeps telling me to update the ARC driver because we do have the Intel B70 in here. But I did go and pull the AI Pro R9700. I pulled one of them out of my Threadripper system. So the one that I wasn't using as the main monitor GPU, I pulled the second one out and I plugged it in here because the B70 is just not powerful enough to drive games with a 4K output, regardless of upscale, for the D2. So that's why we have the 9700 in here. And it's funny because it's like now that I have this setup, I might actually keep this setup for a long time because both of these GPUs are PCI Gen 5 and they're both running at X8 on this Asus motherboard. And if I want to test the Intel, I can literally swing the monitor connections over to the Intel. And then Windows will just make that the primary GPU. And if I want to go back to the AMD one, I just swing the DisplayPort cables over to the AMD GPU. So this is actually a pretty good setup for comparing these two GPUs specifically. And I like that they're both double slot because they're blower style. So I don't have to worry about temperature problems. And it's great. So it's like, just to kind of show people the final build, I mean, this is the build with the D2 Asus X870E Crosshair Hero. You guys can see there's the AMD Radeon AI Pro, and underneath it down there's the Intel B70. So dual blower style, man. This is professional grade. There's that terrible 12 volt high power connector. And then you got your 8-pin standard on the Intel. So really good stuff. I'm getting so used to blower style dual slot GPUs that I don't know. I'm starting to like really prefer this setup. because now it's like, oh, now I know how game developers operate because they're using these type of GPUs when they're developing their games. They only use the regular gamer GPUs when they're doing the QA. They actually use workstation GPUs when they're developing because they don't have to worry about running out of VRAM. But you can see the D2. The D2 is on an EK water block. You guys can see that EK. This is the really thick AIO. You can see the thick tubes on there. They're going all the way up. We got the RGB fans from EK. This is a really thick. I just realized that my chair was like on the cable. All right, but anyway, looking at this, you guys can see the radiator right here. That's the thick radiator. See how big that goes all the way up? Those are the fans, and then the radiator is like right there. That's the thick radiator. So we got the big 360 AIO from EK. And we're running with the stream going. We're running at like 40 to 50 degrees Celsius. So we're in the 40s on liquid. On that D2 200 watt TDP CPU. So yeah, we got good temperatures, and I'm not even using like any PTM 7950. I'm just using basic bargain bin, like low tier average thermal paste, and it works, man. I mean, so don't come to me if you want to know meta choices for like thermal paste. I'm just gonna tell you what gets the cheap stuff. Because that's what I'm using. We're going to be overclocking with the cheap stuff. But yeah, we got the big thick radiator on there, so I guess it's working. 16 gigabyte should be the standard for gaming. Yeah, I agree. I definitely agree. If you're on if you want to game at 4K, ideally you want a 24 gigabyte GPU. But unfortunately, there are no consumer gamer GPUs that you can buy new that have 24 gigs. You can only get them used. 4090 is a good option. 7900 XTX is probably a better option in terms of you'll be able to save a lot of money. 4090s still go for a lot because a lot of people are buying them up and holding onto them for AI, for like amateur level AI. But XTX is still great. XT is also good. 20 gigabyte XT, like a 7900 XT has 20 gigs. That's no slouch. 7900 XT is as fast as a 3090 Ti. 3090 Ti is also a 24 gig GPU, so that's good. It's kind of old though. I don't typically recommend RTX 30 series anymore just because it doesn't have, as a creator, I like my AV1 encoder. And RTX 30 series does not have AV1 encoding, so it's kind of like a deal breaker for me. But gamers probably don't care. Supposedly the upcoming 60. Probably. 3090 Ti draws too much power to recommend for gaming. Micro Center had a whole bunch of them a few months ago, back in like February. Micro Center had like, somebody told me that they got in a shipment of like 7,000 3090 Ti, all Founders Editions, So if you're a big fan of the NVIDIA Founders Edition, a few months ago, man, you could get a 3090 Ti from Micro Center refurb Founders Edition. I think they were selling them for like $800. It was either $750 or $800. And they got in a shipment of 4080 Founders Editions. They didn't get as many. I think he told me they got like 2,000 4080 like nationwide across all the Micro Centers. 4080 refurb Founders Edition. They were selling those for $700. $699 for a 4080 Founders Edition. Those are selling for less than 3090 Ti because 3090 Ti is where it's at for AI because it's, first of all, it's 24 gigs, but more importantly, it has the NVLink bridge. You can combine, think of it like Dragon Ball Z. You have the Potara fusion earrings on the 3090 Ti's. You cannot do that with a 4080. 4080s can't fuse. There's no fusion capability over SLI. This is the reason why 3090 Ti's hold their resale value so well. It's all because of the amateur AI market. And because of the ability to do NVLink. That's the true reason that no one ever talks about. Because what they don't know is Nvidia is hardcore on NVLink in the AI world. We talked about this on a Tech Thursdays episode back in November. You're getting both 60... Why are you getting 6080 though? High-end RDNA 5 is probably going to be faster than the 6080. The only way the 6080 can beat the RDNA 5 or come close to it is if it's faster than 5090. But 5090 is... I mean, I was proven wrong by Nvidia last time when I said that... You guys remember what I said? And Nvidia disappointed me. The 5080 disappointed me. It made me look like I don't know what I was talking about. I lost credibility because of 5080. And because of that, I don't really trust the 6080. So, because of what happened. You remember what I said when I said that the... You guys remember what I said? I said 5080 will be faster than 4090. I said this. I went on record by saying this multiple times, and I stood by this statement. I said the 5080 will be faster than a 4090. And Nvidia proved me wrong. And I'm not wrong that often with these predictions. So I remember this. When I'm wrong, I remember when I'm wrong. Because I'm not wrong very often when it comes to these statements. So they proved me wrong. They made me look like a fool. And because of that, I don't trust 6080. I'm pretty sure RDNA 5's flagship will be faster than 6080. Because this statement is entirely untrue. 4090 managed to maintain its position is greater than 5080. The 4090 is greater than the 5080 in every way imaginable. More VRAM, more performance, better perf per watt, superior in every way. And boy, was I proven wrong. My goodness, was I proven wrong. So I don't trust the Nvidia cards anymore. And because of that, I'm not going to make any specific predictions on the performance numbers when it comes to 6080. I don't trust the 6080 at all. So I'm mostly going to ignore that card. The 6080 will be lucky to match a 4090 or beat it about 10% next gen. If the 6080 don't beat the 4090, that would be tragic. You guys do realize that the 4090 is middle-aged, right? Has it occurred to people that the 4090 is old? Well, if you consider middle-aged old, I don't consider middle-aged old, but it's not young anymore, if you know what I mean. The 4090 ain't no spring chicken anymore. It's been around for a while. In computer years, 3 years means you're middle-aged. If you're a GPU and you're over 3 years old, you're middle-aged. Just saying. But the 4090, dude, if a young and fit 6080 can't beat a middle-aged burnt out 4090, that is embarrassing. You know what I'm saying? That's embarrassing. That either means that 4090 is legendary, like some Batman Bruce Wayne style character that just always wins. It's just kind of weird to say it this way, but it's like, I don't know how else to put it. You know what I'm saying? 4090 can't have 1080 staying power because it's too expensive. You have to keep in mind the 1080 Ti is a $700 graphics card. The 4090 is a $1,600 to $2,000 graphics card. You can never say that the 4090 is like 1080 because the price is not there to back it up. The value is not there. So, no. That'll never be a thing. I understand what you're saying by making that comparison, but you can't actually make that comparison because the 1080 Ti is literally $700. The 4090 is not $700. Brand new. You sold your... Exactly. Fake Frame sold the 4090 for $2,200. You can't say that's going to have 1080 Ti staying power. For that kind of money, that's not how things work. That's not reality. Is it actually better, though? The 3 GOAT graphics cards ever, 8800 GTX, 1080 Ti, and 4090. I get flagships every gen in SLI, so I think... In SLI? Wait, but the 4090 can't do SLI. You can't do SLI on 4090, though. But see, here's the crazy thing. Do you guys ever realize that a 1080 Ti SLI is cheaper than a 4090, like MSRP? Just saying. 1080 Ti SLI equals 700 times 2 equals $1,400 for two 1080 Ti. A single 4090 equals, the lowest it would go is like $1,600, and that's if you bought Founders Edition like I did from Best Buy, because that's how much I spent on my 4090 Founders Edition. $1,600. That's giving the benefit of the doubt to 4090. That's trying to make it as low as possible to match the price of two 1080 Ti SLI. So this is Founders Edition pricing versus Founders Edition pricing. So two 1080 Ti's in their prime at their normal MSRP of $700 is less money than a single 4090. But you sold 4090 for $2,200, man. I still have my 4090. Now that you guys mention it, that's the GPU that I should have thrown in this computer with the D2. That is the GPU that I should have got in here. I did not need to pull this thing out of my Threadripper. I could have just put the 4090 in here. Oh, but if I did that, if I put 4090 in here, I don't think I can fit the Intel GPU underneath it. Because because 4090 is like a quad slot, it would take like 3.5 slots. So it would have no breathing room because the Intel GPU underneath it would block the airflow. See, that's why I don't like axial coolers anymore. I'm such a huge fan of blower style for that reason. Yeah, my 4090 is literally sitting in its original packaging on a bookshelf doing absolutely nothing but collecting dust. It's been there all year. In fact, it's been sitting in a box for like 5 months. Dude. Where is that 4090? Hold up. Where's the 4090? Hold on, let me go get the 4090. I know I still have one somewhere. I found it. I found two things. I found two GPUs, actually. I found... Check this out. Check this out. I found this. GeForce 1080 Founders Edition. Original packaging from Best Buy. Sealed in the original box. Founders Edition blower style GTX 1080. The legend. This is back when Nvidia actually cared about their packaging. And then here it is. The original packaging from Best Buy. GeForce RTX 4090. There it is. Sitting in a box, doing absolutely nothing but collecting dust. Founders Edition. 4090. There it is. 24 gigs of VRAM. That industrial design. This is the GPU. I completely forgot about the 4090, dude. I completely forgot that I still had this thing just laying around in a box for like 5 months. Just throw that thing on the floor. Yeah, we got 3090 Ti Founders Edition and 3080 Ti Founders Edition in the bookshelf over there. But yeah, I actually want to pull out this 1080 because I really, really like the Founders Edition 1080. This is my favorite NVIDIA design. So you get the outer box. The outer box opens up, you get an inner box. Then in the inner box, 1080 Founders Edition in the ESD bag. It's almost like brand new, dude. So much stuff in here. Look at this. Look at this. Original. What is this? Whoa. Check this out. This is back when Nvidia actually cared about gamers. The packaging is more higher quality. Welcome to GeForce GTX Gaming. GeForce 1080. Quick start guide. Support guide. You get all the fancy documentation, all the brochures. Welcome to GeForce GTX Game. Oh, yeah. Look, check this out. Special premium badge. A metallic badge for your case. It's so shiny metallic. GeForce GTX NVIDIA. Stick once, stick wisely. Your new GeForce GTX powered hardware comes with some unique gaming swag. Don't affix it to your notebook or desktop's internals, your sibling's hair, or your pet. There you go. GeForce GTX. The ultimate. Yeah, you get all this stuff, man. This is when, I could tell, this is when NVIDIA actually cared about gamers. Because you felt like you're getting a bunch of extra things. You know, like a metallic case badge for GeForce GTX. You get all this cool stuff in here. Now, what do you get? Nothing. You get a GPU in a generic throwaway box. The 4090 was the last one that had good packaging. Alright, here it is. GTX 1080 in the original bag. ESD bag from NVIDIA. There it is, my favorite NVIDIA Founders Edition of all time. The blower style with that green non-RGB GeForce GTX. Is it just me, or is GTX better sounding than RTX? GeForce GTX always sounded better than GeForce RTX. There it is. The Ultimate Founders Edition GeForce 1080. Wow. 8 gigabytes of GDDR5X. Faster than a 980 SLI. Faster than a 980 SLI. There's the SLI fingers. Right there. That was when they were doing their Fusion bridge. You could run 2 of these in SLI. These were the glory days of multi-GPU, full backplate, everything. The glory days of GeForce SLI for gamers. Now, SLI exists for AI and only AI. The world has changed so much, man. This thing has a DVI port on the back. Look at that. Oh, you guys can barely even see it. DVI, 3 display ports, 1 HDMI, and a DVI. A dual link DVI. That's 5 display outputs on the back. Single 8-pin power connector. Single 8-pin power connector for the GeForce GTX 1080 Founders. This is my favorite Founders Edition. I might actually not put this back in the box. I might just leave this on my desk for a while. It looks so cool. Yeah, I might just leave that on the desk. That looks so cool. It's an excellent paperweight. Still works. I'll just throw it in this thing for now without the actual ESD bag. There it is. That looks for like, that's like a great desk ornament, you know what I'm saying? Just leave it like that. This is what I mean. NVIDIA's old packaging, the packaging up through the 20 series was still good. But the packaging on the 10 series was best in class. It was so cool. They stopped caring after the 40 series. The 40 series box is not good. It's cool, but it's not good. And the 50 series box for Founders Edition is a joke. It is terrible. Do you have the 64 gigabyte GPU USB? I don't know what that means. Why don't you ever sell? Why don't you ever sell things you don't use when the market's up? Because I literally don't care about the market. I don't really typically do used hardware. And I like my GPU collection. I don't care that the GPUs are losing value the longer I keep them. That to me is completely irrelevant. But obviously, I'm in the minority there when it comes to that. Because realistically, yeah, I should be selling old GPUs. But I like having a collection of GPUs. And CPUs. Now, the thing that I might end up selling at some point, it might be redundant motherboards. Like, I have, like, multiple motherboards of one socket. That I might end up selling at some point. Because, I mean, I don't think I need all the extra motherboards. But, yeah. But the GPUs, no, I'm good. I'm keeping them. But that's why I typically only aim for, like, the Founders Edition stuff, if that makes sense. I prefer the reference cards. Like, for Intel, I only want the Intel Limited Edition or the Intel official reference cards. AMD, it's the same exact way. I prefer the AMD reference cards. I always have. I don't have... It's not like I don't have anything against Sapphire, you know, Asus, whatever. Like, their custom cards are fine. I personally don't prefer those cards. There are a few exceptions. I can give you a really, really good exception. I do not recommend the 5090 Founders Edition. The 5090 Founders Edition is terrible. So in that scenario, definitely buy an AIB. But yeah, that's a rare case. Usually the Founders Editions are fine. I like the Sapphire AIB cards for AMD. The Sapphire Nitro is very good. The I've never had a problem with Sapphire cards, although I know someone who did have a problem with one Sapphire card. But Sapphire is really good, man. My Sapphire is somewhere. I don't know where it is right now. There's a Sapphire 7900 XTX floating around somewhere around here. Just hanging out. It used to be in this computer, but I took it out because of the Intel GPU. You love AIB cards? I like reference cards because when I think of a given generation, I'll give you guys a good example. The example right here. You know, like when I think back to the different eras of gaming, I think of the reference cards because the reference cards are the iconic cards that sort of set the tone for that era of gaming. You know, like the Founders Edition blower styles from the 900 series and the 10 series. You know, and then NVIDIA transitioned over to axial design for reference with the 20 series, which was kind of controversial. And then they maintain that with the 30 series, the 40 series, and now the 50 series. XFX from AMD and Zotac from NVIDIA. Yeah, XFX is also very good. XFX, I mean, you guys know I have the XFX Magnetic Air 9070 XT. It's in my living room PC, hooked up to the PlayStation VR 2. Yeah, that's with the ASRock Nova and the 9800X 3D. That's my living room PC. See, I don't have a crazy setup like Super Googly. Super Googly has like some endgame, insane, crazy living room setup. I have a moderate ASRock Nova with a 9800X 3D and a 9070 XT and 48 gigabytes of RAM running at DDR5 8000. To me, that's pretty high spec for a living room PC. I mean, I think a lot of gamers would really, really like that type of PC. But yeah, that's my living room PC. That's the VR PC. Yeah, I remember. Yeah, it was you. I remember. The XTX. Yeah, I have that same card. The same card is somewhere. If I knew where it was, I'd show it. I don't know where it is, actually. Now I'm kind of sad. I don't know where my Sapphire is. What happened to Sapphire? I don't know. Oh, the Intel B580 is in its box, like right there on the desk. It's literally right there. You guys can't really see it, but it's right there. Yeah. The 5090 Astral box is up there on the top of the shelf next to the Red Devil and the 7900 XT. XFX Mercury Magnetic Air in white and the Zotac solid core. Yeah, Zotac is good, man. Don't listen to people who hate on Zotac. Zotac is good, is like one of the best values you can get for a GeForce card. It's super good. Zotac is good. XFX is good. For AMD, I recommend Zotac. Or no, for AMD is Zotac. For AMD, I recommend Sapphire is my number one choice. Number 2 is XFX. Number 3 would be Power Color in that order. And then for NVIDIA, if you're going AIB, I recommend Zotac, PNY, and maybe Asus. Although I don't know, man. I don't like supporting. I don't like supporting the ones who do both. Like I don't like the companies that double dip. It's not like I hate the companies. I just don't like that they double dip. Like what I mean by that is Asus sells Radeon and GeForce, and Gigabyte does the same thing. I tend to not prefer those because I feel like they're double dipping. They're selling both sides. I mean, it's nothing wrong with it. It's just I would rather prefer buying an AIB from a company that is dedicated to one architecture, because that means that they put all their engineering effort into optimizing their cooler for that GPU. So that's the reason why I recommend Sapphire and XFX and Power Color for AMD cards, because they only work on AMD cards. They don't work on GeForce cards. And then likewise for NVIDIA, I prefer Zotac and PNY and maybe Galax, but Galax is not in the US. When I was in Japan, I think Palette and there was Galax and there was another one. Those are really popular over there. But Zotac and PNY are the ones that I would prefer if I was buying an NVIDIA card. But it depends, because like I ended up, I mean, I don't want to sound like a hypocrite because I have an Asus Astral 5090. But the reason why I have that card is because the 5090 is notorious for the melted connector problems. And I'm too paranoid about the cable melting. So it's like, I'm going to use the Asus Astral because the Asus Astral has monitoring circuitry to tell you if your cable is going to melt at a certain point. So without that, I don't want to be like having anxiety about, oh, the 5090 might melt, you know, like I got to check with the clamp meter. It's like, I don't want to have to do that all the time. So that's the reason why I have the Astral, because Asus had the foresight and the wisdom to actually put circuitry in there to look at now they can't stop it, but they can look and at least warn you. That's still one step better than no visibility, guessing in the dark and hoping that your connector is not going to melt. So that's the reason why I have the Asus. But normally, ignoring the 5090, because the 5090 is the only card that has this stupid problem, I would recommend PNY and Zotac because I would prefer to support a company that does all their engineering effort on making sure that their cooler is optimized for a given GPU. Not saying that Asus or Gigabyte don't do a good job, but Asus already is so big, you know, like I'm going to go support the little guy. Asus will be totally fine with me not buying their GPUs. So, and then Gigabyte, same thing. They sell so many other things. They sell motherboards, they sell all sorts of stuff. They don't need me to buy a GPU from them. Thoughts on MSI branded cards? MSI is, I kind of throw them into that same group as Gigabyte and Asus. I don't typically recommend them. I don't think they do anything wrong. I have two MSI. I used two MSI cards in the past. One is a GeForce 970. The other one was an AMD Radeon RX 480, and both of them are totally fine. So MSI, I think, historically has done good work on both AMD and NVIDIA cards. Recently, I think MSI no longer sells Radeon cards, so they're kind of now, in a weird way, similar to PNY and Zotac. They just kind of like stopped selling AMD cards for whatever reason. But yeah, if EVGA was still around, I would definitely recommend EVGA alongside Zotac and PNY. But if I'm looking at an NVIDIA card, not counting the stupid 5090 with the dumb connector, ignoring that, I would gladly get a PNY or a Zotac if I was getting a GeForce card. It's pretty much Power Color, Asus and ASRock. Gigabyte. Last because of my Army experience. Oh, RMA experience, Sapphire. Yeah, well, Sapphire's still my top pick. I haven't had any problems with Sapphire. There was one time where I did open a support ticket with Sapphire years ago, thinking that I had to do an RMA, but then I figured out that the problem was not the GPU, it was the power supply. This was my old Vega 64. My Vega 64 was shutting off my computer when I was playing Final Fantasy 15. And it was because it was tripping OCP because my Seasonic power supply was too sensitive to transient loads. So I swapped the power supply and the problem went away. So Sapphire was ready to RMA my card. They were not arguing with me. They were ready to go. They're like, okay, we're gonna give you send it to us. We're gonna send you another one. And then I was like, okay, give me a couple of days to test this other power supply. So I tested the Corsair power supply HX 1200, and no more random turning off the computer. So I figured, okay, I found the problem. And Johnny Guru, who now works at Corsair, but this is before he worked at Corsair, he used to do power supply reviews, and he had a whole blog article, and there was a whole like forum post with people going back and forth about certain power supplies tripping OCP on Vega 64, even at stock settings on a Vega 64. And this would only become more well known and understood once the 3090 and the 3090 Ti, especially the 3090 Ti, when those GPUs hit the market, oh man, OCP issues with power supplies, turning off the computer randomly under load, under transient loads, became very, very well known. But I was kind of the pioneer discovering this thing with a Vega 64, and Sapphire was not an issue at all. Like they were ready to do the RMA. So to me, I had a perfect experience with Sapphire support. So I give them high marks. So sometimes it's also communication. Like you got to keep in mind when you're dealing with support people, you have like what you tell them is going to make the biggest difference in how they respond. Like the way you word your correspondence with them it can make a huge difference sometimes you're dealing with support on support tickets. So, but I've never had a bad I've never had a bad like RMA experience with any vendor. I've had a bad support ticket experience with Gigabyte. It had nothing to do with an RMA though. It was literally me reporting to them that they had like BIOS bugs. And they, instead of wanting to acknowledge, they acknowledged like one or two of them, but then they started arguing with me with like another one. And at that point, I was like, okay, well, you guys are just kind of shooting yourselves in the foot, because if you're not going to fix the problem, then you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go to one of your competitors and use their motherboard instead, because I know their motherboard works. And then they didn't really care, you know, like, and I'm like, okay, that kind of attitude, that's how you eventually kill your business. Because if you don't care, like if I'm going to go to Asus and Asus works and you don't, I'm going to start telling people when they come to me, like, which motherboard should I get? And if I start telling them, don't get Gigabyte because Gigabyte has this problem if you're doing this thing, and it's like, well, then go get someone else. There's a reason why companies end up where they are. You know, some people say it's greed and corruption, whatever. No, that's not true. It ultimately comes down to the quality of the product and how well it works and how good the post-sale support is. That is how companies rise and fall. And when companies don't acknowledge problems, they try to like argue, they don't want to do anything, that it just shows negligence and laziness. If that's the impression that you get as the customer, what does that mean? It means you're not going to buy from them the next time. So, Gigabyte was okay with the Zen 4 launch and the 13th gen. Gigabyte was not good with 14th gen and Zen 5. At least the initial Zen 5 launch. Like all their new X870 boards were terrible. We've been through this. But they kind of redeemed themselves. So good on them. But I've never had a problem, guys, with like RMA stuff. I've never had a problem. The most recent RMA I had to do was the MSI Godlike. You guys remember the Godlike with the dreaded dynamic dashboard messing up? They didn't argue. They're ready. They even told me, if you want to keep the board and just ship us the faulty display, just ship us the display and we'll ship you a new one. No questions asked. So, never had a problem. But yeah, hopefully I answered the question on the RMA and the MSI stuff. But anyway, guys, I didn't realize I've been streaming for like about 4 hours, and I barely even played any games. So unfortunately, or fortunately, this is gonna be the end of the stream. The problem you had was armade. Yeah, but sometimes you gotta remember how, like, it really depends on how, you gotta kind of get a feel of how the support rep is. So, I don't know. But anyway, that's gonna be it for this Friday stream. This was supposed to be a gaming stream featuring the D2, and we ended up talking about everything but the D2. This turned into a tech talk. It's almost like these streams, these weekend streams, are becoming tech talk stuff. Maybe I should try to make Tech Thursdays less organized and more like this, but then I don't know, that might alienate some viewers. Where there's literally no plan. The stream, the conversation just goes wherever it goes. We ended up talking about, you know, like Nova Lake, Zen 6, flagships, gamer CPUs, the PS6 launch. I don't remember how that got in there. The 6090 launch, RDNA 5. Man, we went all over the place. I was supposed to play a bunch of CPU-bound games, and then I've played like Final Fantasy 14 for like 15 minutes. And it's buttery smooth with the D2, but Final Fantasy, it's an MMO, so it's CPU dependent. But anyway, guys, that's going to be it. I got to get on out of here. It was great. The discussion, I think, was interesting. I might cut up some of this video, at least the part about the flagship CPUs, and turn this into a actual video. And go from there. But anyway, thanks for tuning in, everyone, and I will see you. I may see you guys tomorrow. I don't know what I'm gonna do tomorrow. I may just overclock the CPU and just turn that into a video and see what that goes. It's gonna take a while to stability test everything. That's usually what takes the longest amount of time when doing overclocking content. But if you're interested in the overclocking stuff, that's my next planned video, is overclocking the D2. I'm going to try to get 5.7 to 5.8 gigahertz on the fast CCD and maybe 5.4, 5.5 on the slow CCD. And see if, I'm just going to look at what 9800X3D or 9850X3D and 9800X3D are able to do. And that's going to be my target for the two different CCDs. Because one CCD is a 9850 X3D, the other one is a 9800 X3D. So I'll just use the numbers that overclockers get for those two CCDs to determine what my CCDs are capable of. But anyway, guys, thanks for tuning in as always, and I will see you guys. If I don't see you guys tomorrow, I will see you guys on Tech Thursdays, or I'll see you guys sometime during the week. We will be showcasing an upcoming game. There is an open beta test this weekend for Grand Blue Fantasy Relink, which we were supposed to play with the D2. So if you're interested in that game, it's free to play this weekend. So do check that out. I might actually check it out with the D2. Otherwise, the next big game will be Saros. We will be streaming Saros. That game is probably a Game of the Year contender. At least there's not a lot of competition right now. You know, it's Crimson Desert and nothing else. So stay tuned for that if you're interested in Saros. If you liked Returnal, this is made by House Mark or Marquis. I don't know how to say Marcus. House Marquis. House Mark. Marcus. House whatever. The developers that did Returnal, which was a really good game back in like 2021. So this is their newest game. We will be live streaming it. So stay tuned for that, and I will catch you guys next time. Take care and see you then. Thanks.